Good morning. It's January the 28th. Welcome to council meeting. To those who are visiting, we're glad you're here and hope you'll get something from the meeting. For those who maybe are watching on YouTube, we apologize as we are having an issue with presenting documentation over the live stream. And we are going to have it fixed, but it is going to take, we have a new piece of equipment we have to order, so it's going to be a few weeks before that comes. There is a link on the YouTube video that you can go to, and it'll take you right to the agenda with the documents. So we hope that you'll be able to see those documents as we proceed through the meeting. I would like to start by acknowledging that we are in Mi'kma'ki, the traditional and unceded territory of the Mi'kmaq people. We come with respect for this land and we are on today and for the people who reside here. Are there any announcements, recognitions, or acknowledgements? Councillor Brooks.
I just want to share that I had the pleasure of being at the Oak Hill 50th anniversary celebration for that fire department. There were also some 50 and 40 and 20-year awards that were handed out, and it was really, really amazing. And one of the things that I want to say that was so great about that Oak Hill Fire Department is they've got a real youth brigade that they've attracted, and they've brought in a bunch of younger firefighters. And as I said to those folks, it's not only great to see, it's essential. And you know, the type of volunteering that we have all around our municipality for fire service is crucial. If somebody doesn't show up to a church meal and they're not volunteering, then the meal may come late. If someone shows up or doesn't show up to a fire, it may mean property or lives at stake. So what I said to those folks, and I hope we will continue to push it here, is what ways, creative ways, can we support those volunteer firefighters really in tangible ways? And I hope it's a conversation that we'll have in deeper lengths in this council, because it's, with our aging population, it's an increasing challenge that we've got to enlist young folks into firefighting service. So thank you.
Councillor Oikel.
Yes, I need to declare a conflict of interest on item 10.1.1.
Anyone else? I would like to acknowledge and congratulate the town of Bridgewater for winning the Federation of Canadian Municipalities 2024 Sustainable Communities Award. And this is for their climate change mitigation Energize Bridgewater Energy Project. This is a national award, so it's quite significant. This award celebrates innovative sustainability projects from communities across Canada. So as their neighbor, I'm very happy to congratulate them on behalf of all of us. Today we are acknowledging African Heritage Month. February is recognized internationally as African Heritage Month. It is a time to recognize and salute the many contributions and ongoing achievements of people of African descent all over the world, and here in the municipality of the District of Lunenburg. The 2025 African Heritage Month theme is Our Smiles, Our Joy, Our Resilience as African Nova Scotians. During African Heritage Month, we honor the rich culture, legacy, accomplishments, and contributions of African Nova Scotians, both past and present. The theme encapsulates the enduring spirit and resilience demonstrated by people of African descent throughout the centuries in our province. Next Tuesday at 1 p.m., we will hold a flag-raising ceremony at our office here, featuring performances from local artists, and you're all invited to attend. I thought today it might be interesting to acknowledge and give a little bit of a story about one of our African Nova Scotian residents who lives in Queens County, but I consider that a neighboring community, and that's Mr. Don Oliver. And many of you probably have met Mr. Oliver in your life here and activities. He served his life as a lawyer and was the first Black man nominated to the Senate of Canada and served from 1990 to 2013. And he was only the second Black Canadian appointed to the chamber. He descended from African-American slaves who were refugees here who were settled by the British after the War of 1812. So a long history here. He is a nephew of Portia White, who is a well-recognized Canadian opera singer. He practiced law for 36 years, and he taught at Dalhousie. He's a member of the Order of Canada and also the Order of Nova Scotia, active in many community activities, including the Halifax Children's Aid. He was president and director of the Neptune Theatre Foundation, and he was a founding director of the Black United Front here in Nova Scotia. So just as a way of putting a local face to the African Heritage Month. Welcome to those in the gallery today who are visiting with us. I just want to tell those who maybe haven't been here before, our washrooms are out those double doors and to the left. We are happy to receive public input. It's one of the opportunities for the public to engage with council, and residents are welcome to use the public input portion of the meeting to share their thoughts with council on municipal topics that are important to them. We ask that all statements be respectful of other members of the public, and we ask that you provide your name and address when you arrive at the mic. If you have a question or concern that you would like to have addressed, then we ask that you leave us your email address so we can contact you regarding your question or comment. The chair, that would be me, will respond to questions that can easily be answered, and it is at the discretion of the chair to make that determination. If your question or concern cannot be answered by me, which at this stage in my career here is probably it's probably true, I can't answer it. It will be handled as follows. We will email you with the answer to your question or respond to your concern. We may also contact you to get additional information or further clarification on the matter to assist us in responding to your question. We will require that you provide your email address. We will provide a summary of answers and responses at a future council meeting during business arising from the minutes, and this will form part of the public record of your inquiry and our response. In this way, we will provide the answers or responses to not only you, the resident, that has brought this to our attention, but to all the residents of MODL. Statements and questions related to personnel or to operations can be emailed to the Chief Administrative Officer, Tom McEwen. We allow 15 minutes for public input today. So if there are any people in the gallery today who would like to give public input, now would be the time. Mr. Vino, anyone else? Mr. McDonald? So that's 2. So we can receive that now if you'd like to come to the mic. 1. Mr. Vino, do you want to come first? If you just give your name and your location. Is there a third? Sorry.
Tyler Vino,
Okay.
just from Mush Lake on Allen Irvin Lane, Lower Northfield. I've got some rental properties that are, I'm the 3rd generation owner in Northfield area. I have 2 brothers that both have, again, 3rd generation rental properties. One of my brothers has 6 mobile homes on the Smith Road, so they're all in the same PID. Those have been rented out for probably 40, 50 years. So I guess I'm just concerned about the cluster development stuff. I think we should just keep in mind for everyone, we need more rentals, we need more housing. The harder we make things to build is going to increase the price for the renters. And not everybody wants to live in an apartment in Cookville. Or in Bridgewater. Some people want a single family home, they want a modular home, a duplex unit. So it's something it raises a flag for me. I've got a property in Pine Grove. I'm looking at doing a cluster development for some more rental properties. And again, the harder you guys make it on me, the builder, it's just gonna raise the rent price for the renter. So please, I just ask you guys to please keep that in mind when we're making big decisions. Other than that, there's not a lot I can say.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you for that. Okay.
Good
morning, everyone. My name is Morgan McDonald. I'm from Crosstown, Nova Scotia, and I'm the co-owner of Sumac Development Limited. We're focused on building affordable and attainable housing. I've spoken to you before, but I'm just reminding you, when you're considering housing, to really think about how it intersects with the provincial and federal programs around affordable and attainable housing. I've told you before that all of those programs have a bar of 5 units in a development in order to qualify for any of those supports. And that's any supports of affordable and attainable housing through the CMHC and through the province, unless you are working with, there are some caveats for very specific targeted supports, but for the most part, those supports really do need to have 5 units in a project. And the provincial or the federal government just released a support where you don't have to pay any HST on a development, but it has to have 4 units as the minimum size. So we've been trying to find a way to do an as-a-right or very straightforward builds right at the bottom of those thresholds that match up with our community and have very little pushback, have less pressure on. Sorry, no problem. So we're trying to really find at the bottom of that threshold where you have the minimal impact on the community, on the groundwater and wastewater systems in unserviced areas, but still qualify for those affordability programs. It's a tricky business. And so in the cluster development regulations that you see today, we were also part of a number of people who reached out to the development department, and you spoke last time a little bit about the changes from 4 and above being considered a cluster development to 5 and above. That does allow a duplex and triplex on a shared driveway to be considered an as-a-right development as long as it meets the wastewater standards and the environment standards set by the province, which are already quite stringent. And so just here to appreciate that flexibility. And I also recognize that you need to have some level of regulation as a resident. You know, I understand those concerns. But with a current housing emergency that we have at the moment, I just want you to keep that lens in terms of when you're making your decisions to think about how the policies at the municipal level match up with the federal and provincial counterparts and the different programs that support housing. Because it seems like many departments don't speak to each other and they make policies that overlap, and that overlap almost always seems to happen at the bottom threshold, which is very much where these projects happen in rural areas. In urban areas, they're always going to be building with many more than 5 units. Almost all of the economy of scale from the developers I've spoken to is around 60 to 120 units is what they're looking for these affordability programs. But we think that we have a very strategic advantage in rural areas to be able to use residential construction without steel frames and 1 or 2 story buildings that are wheelchair accessible and highly insulated. You can meet some of these very high standards with residential construction on the ground as opposed to going up where you don't need fire suppression, you don't need elevators. So there is a possibility for us to really have an affordable and attainable housing industry in rural Nova Scotia and in urban rural Nova Scotia in a way that other parts of Canada it might be very difficult to do. And we can do that while respecting the environment and not having a huge impact or pushback from the communities, because it would look very similar to the housing that already exists in our community. So I'm just advocating for that vision of having local residential construction companies that are currently building houses to become small developers, independent developers, supported by these programs and also by the municipality. There is a role for the municipality to play in terms of helping with either different types of financing or grants, land options, flexibilities in the development process, or a business development bank similar to a COA. A lot of the things that help other small businesses get going have a specific carve-out that say you can't do this with housing, and that's because it is the jurisdiction, generally speaking, of the CMHC. However, we've seen that the CMHC has not always been able to deliver for rural areas.
And so I think there's a role for municipalities to kind of open up some innovation and that idea of entrepreneurship and small business, dealing with and constructing affordable and attainable housing projects in our area, and tapping in and bringing some of those federal and municipal or federal and provincial supports to our area to spur economic growth and to make housing that is contractually more attainable and affordable for our residents. Thanks very much.
Thank you very much. And I just want to let people know that the details around the cluster development and dates for the public hearing around this and second reading will be posted on engagemodl.ca. So that's a great site to go to read all the documents associated with any of the projects we're working on. And over the next number of months, there'll be lots of things posted there as we come forward with public discussion around budget and some of the other projects we're working on. So thank you to those who attended and had their say at the mic today. Was there anyone else? Did I miss somebody? No? Okay, thank you. We'll move into the approval of our agenda for this council meeting of January 28th. It's been moved by Councillor Moore, seconded by Councillor Bell. All those in favor signify by raising their hand. Those opposed, motion is carried. The minutes of the January 14th meeting have been circulated. Are there any corrections that need to be made to those minutes? I see no one making any note of that, so the minutes stand approved as circulated. Business arising from the minutes. I just want to make reference to a public question we had at our policy and strategy meeting, but in following our procedure around public input, I just wanted to recognize that Mr. Himmelman made a question and raised an issue around waste receptacles, and that will be on our agenda today. So if he is watching, we'll be discussing it later in our agenda. So that is coming forward for presentation today with the tendering process and the background to that decision about waste receptacles in our parks. There is no awarding of tenders today. We'll move on to presentations, and I would call on Joanne Cooper to come forward and speak about the 55-plus games.
So yeah, my name is Joanne Cooper. I'm one of the co-chairs for the 55-plus games coming to Lunenburg County September 21st to the 25th. I'm also the GM at the Best Western here in Cookeville. So thank you for giving me the time to present on behalf of the 55-plus games. I know that several people would sit at the LCLC board level, and we've had MODL staff involved from the get-go on these games. So I'm assuming you're somewhat aware of them, but as one of our main stakeholders, of course, we want to make sure that everybody's up to date and keep the communication open. So again, thank you for the financial commitment in this fiscal year and for the consideration for next year as well for the games. So Nova Scotia 55-plus games coming back to Lunenburg County September 21st to the 25th. We have hosted them before. That was back in 2017. I was part of the committee back in 2017 as well, and I can attest to the fact that the games brought a lot of excitement and activity to the area, hence why we're looking to have them hosted again here in 2025. The games were originally secured by the LCLC. For the 2025, it will be 4 nights, 5 days, again starting on Sunday the 21st. We're expecting about 700 plus participants coming to the area. That says 22 events, but in our last meeting last week, I think we've added one more, so we're up to 23 events, 20 plus venues throughout Lunenburg County, and of course lots of social programs, so an opening and closing ceremony. We're hoping to have nightly social programs local businesses and stuff as well. So it is a very packed 4 nights, 5 days event. And of course, the vision is always to showcase Lunenburg County to the rest of the province. And these are actually games that do go on to a national level. So they do hold a lot of weight, and we want to make sure that we're showing participants how wonderful Lunenburg County is and the South Shore, while making sure they're having an enjoyable experience with our facilities, the way the games are run, and of course, the social elements of it as well. We want to stimulate tourism, economic and community growth. We have had an economic impact study done. It's estimated that it'll bring about $550,000 spent to the area, with about $450,000 of that being directly in Lunenburg County and Bridgewater area. We want to make sure we're supporting our 55-plus senior community and giving them, and with the 55-plus games, there is a provincial organization, and they have their own set of rules that we need to abide by. So we're working with them to make sure that we're delivering the games in accordance with them as well. So some people may be aware of Events Lunenburg County. This was a group that existed prior to COVID. It sort of went a little bit dormant in COVID times. It was developed for the purpose of bringing larger events to the area. Under the Nova Scotia, under the 2025 games, we do hope to bring that committee back, and the host committee will operate under Events Lunenburg County. As I mentioned, my name is Joanne Cooper, Best Western Bridgewater, and I'm one of the co-chairs, along with Andrew Tanner of Saltbox or Mahone Bay Brewing Company. Before Andrew and I were even involved, there was a great contingent of staff that were already developing how this would look. Thank you to Trudy and Ruth, and I believe Kelly is on board now for really doing a lot of work at the ground level to make sure that we have all that we need to run the games. Mile East from Yarmouth has been contracted to sort of do the heavy lifting. 55-plus games was held in Yarmouth 4 years ago with great success, so Rick is very well versed in how the games work, how to work with the provincial society, what kind of things we need to make sure that we're covering, from volunteers to registration to websites. So he's been a really great person to have on board. And then we're working with a couple representation, as I said, from the 55-plus Games Society, Maurice and Ellen, and the provincial rep for them are Les Anderson. And they come down for our monthly meetings and just give us their input to make sure that everything is in accordance with the 55-plus games. Demographics that you probably know better than I do, but 48% of the population is 55 plus, so we're really talking to people that live in our community day in and day out. And the rest of the information is there for you with regards to the male, female, and the breakdown. So combined, it's 49% of the Lunenburg Queens is 55 plus. So it is really an event that speaks to our community. These are the games that we have so far. Some of them, I'm sure, seem somewhat random. They're all over the place, from card games to hockey to pickleball. There are mandated events that we need to include. There's a list of those that we need to pick from, and then we get to pick a few that are not really mandated. Like I said, a lot of these do go on to a national level, so it is a competitive games, while it is for the social and the fun as well. There is definitely a competitive side to it, as there is a national games. This year, I think it is being held in Manitoba, if I'm not mistaken, but it is out west. And again, everything from cards to hockey to pickleball to runs. The one that's not on that we've added last week was shuffleboard, and then we have a couple try-it games, and we're hoping on making use of the river to demonstrate kayaking this year as well, which would be sort of a new take. These are the venues. So all throughout Lunenburg County. Again, and of course, a lot of 700 people coming, so I know ourselves at the Best Western and all the other larger accommodations definitely have room blocks for them. This is a group that actually will make use of, they tend to RV, so there'll be use of campgrounds. I'm sure all the smaller Airbnbs and short-term rentals will be utilized during this time as well. Where we are right now, so again, there is, the structure is, we have myself and Andrew as co-chairs, and again, a very great working team around the table. There are some higher level committee chairs that are required with regards to sponsorship, volunteer, marketing, communications, appeals, and then another really big part of the program is making sure that all of those 24 sports have a sport marshal, so somebody that actually heads up that event, and then come closer to the games, we'll definitely be looking for a lot of volunteers for that week. The draft budget is about $185,000, with $20,000 of that being earmarked for a legacy program for the community. We are hoping on February 21st, I think is our date, 7 months out from the game starting, to sort of do a little bit of a public launch. I mean, we're certainly not keeping it quiet at this point, but we haven't done any big public reveal on this, so we're hoping the 21st to sort of do a little bit of kickoff, get this out to the community, maybe put out our call for more volunteers. And other than that, Rick is working with the committee heads to get everything in order and to make sure that we're well on our way for another successful games. That's really all I have. I don't know if you have any questions or concerns.
Any questions? Councillor Brooks?
I love this whole thing. I think it's great. I'm excited about it for our community and for the participants. I think it's a great opportunity to bring some business here and certainly showcase what you're talking about. I see that it's spread around the district, and I love that. I'm going to advocate for Riverport and say, please consider coming down to do the kayaks there to tie another
Okay.
community into the whole mix. We've got a lot of places down there that would be ideal for that. So just throwing that out there. But thank you for what you've done.
Noted, thank you, for sure.
Other questions? Okay. Oh, Councillor Smith.
If a community would like to host a try-it
Yeah.
sport, how should they get that on the map?
So would be, again, reach out to right now myself or Andrew or Rick. We are working on a website and social media platforms as well that hopefully will be launched very soon. And again, that will come out as a little bit of a public launch within the next month or so, but I can send along information. If someone wanted to reach out to me directly, then by all means, they could reach out, and we would love for partners to take on some stuff. The venues that we're working with, they've been really great, and a lot of them are taking responsibility for the event. So if darts are at the Legion, then there's someone from the Legion taking on sort of overseeing the dart game. So we're all up for communities and areas and facilities that wanna put something in there for sure.
Councillor Weichel.
I'm just wondering when you're anticipating registration to be open, because I have quite a few seniors who keep asking me because they want to do 45s.
Okay, great. I wish I had a more clear answer for you. We are working, like I said, working on a website, and there's a back end of a registration piece on that for online. Hopefully that will be ready to launch when we launch when we sort of do that public launch in February.
Councillor Hubley.
I'm just curious, what venue is going to be able to take the pickleball? Is that the Lunenburg Tennis Club?
No, I think there's several venues that they're looking at for pickleball. Pickleball might be that, and hockey are definitely two of the biggest events. I believe the Baptist Church is one, and Michelin Social Club is one as well, but they may actually be even looking for a third. From what I understand, as many as you can take for pickleball, they'll just keep coming, so looking for lots of venues for that.
Councillor Brooks.
Have you gone out for an RFP on this yet? Do you have any sponsors who are lined up to participate?
We don't have, we do have some sponsors in the works, so the sponsorship package, we just did a final review at our last meeting, which was last week, so we're ready to launch with that. I'm definitely looking for some local sponsors, but again, trying not to put the full burden on the community. One of our sort of mandates that hasn't been done in the past is hopefully maybe going out a little bit more provincially and looking for some provincial sponsors that might carry their sponsorship through to upcoming games as well,
Great.
and not just in the area. And we do have some funding from Events Nova Scotia coming in from the province as well. Bridgewater and MODL being big supporters, and then we're doing presentations at the other councils as well for some funding.
Anything else? Okay, thank you, Joanne.
Thank you.
And good luck, and we'll be right there with you.
It's always a pleasure. Thank you for your time.
Let's move on then to, we have a presentation at 10:15, but we will move into our Policy and Strategy Committee recommendations. And if people are wondering about getting more background on the items we're going to discuss coming up over the next number of items, the discussion at our meeting last week at Policy and Strategy on January 21st would be the great reference point to go back and hear our full discussion. There was plenty of it, and if you want to follow along with that and get some sense of the flavor of the discussion there, you can watch it on YouTube and get caught up on it. But we will move to our first item, which is 10.1.1, which is cluster development regulations, the first reading. And Mr. Shepherd will take us through this.
Good morning, everyone. I don't have a formal presentation this morning, but what I was hoping to do was just kind of as a high-level walk through the item that was discussed last week at the Policy and Strategy Committee meeting and outline a couple of recommended motions to move this into first reading today. What occurred last week was my colleague gave an overview of cluster developments, which, as a reminder, are a type of residential development where several detached or multi-unit buildings are located on the same property. And so that type of development does not involve the subdivision of land, and that's a type of development that's occurring probably more frequently now than in the past in our municipality. And so what these regulations would do is to introduce new regulations that would impact some of these types of developments. So there are parameters around what a cluster development is. It kicks in at a certain size. So the basic definition is 6 or more of these types of units that are contained within more than 2 buildings on a lot. So basically it excludes one multi-unit building. So it could have 20 units in it. That's not a cluster development. These are maybe that 20-unit building plus another dwelling. That becomes a cluster development. And it could be any combination of that, but the key there is it's 6 or more units. The regulations would introduce requirements for a couple of things, probably one of the most important being water. And so the province has, the Department of Environment has water quality quantity study requirements. They have a guidebook for professionals, and that guidebook outlines the number of units and the types of testing that needs to be done to ensure adequate supply and quality of water in a new development. And so what this would do would be refer to that, so that would kick in as part of the development review process to ensure there's an adequate supply of water. Another piece of this is to look at emergency access. So it's the suitability of the access points in the road network within a development to ensure that emergency vehicles can get into the site and provide services if needed. Another piece is looking at environmental impact. So there would be a requirement to look at things like species at risk or sensitive environmental features like wetlands and other things like that as part of the development review process. Those are not currently being done, and so this would introduce that as part of the review process. So what you have included in the package today is just a brief overview of the kind of summary of the development types, as well as an appendix that contains the regulations themselves. So what this would do would be to amend the current municipal planning strategy with a couple of new policies, as well as amend the current land use bylaw with several new regulations that would require these new developments to go through a development agreement process and outline some specifics such as what you might call a grandfathering clause for kind of in progress developments as well. And there is also a package of correspondence that was received when this originally was brought to council last year. So there was quite a lot of correspondence that was received from the public. So that is also included in this package and is available for people to consider. So what the next steps would be if council chooses to give notice of its intention today and conduct first reading, the motions would, these regulations would come into effect as of the posting of this notice. So that in reality, it would be probably later today. Information could get posted on our website. These would come into effect today, but similar to before, there is a limited time period at which council must then conduct second reading and hold a public hearing. And that would give the final approval. So putting this in place today brings those regulations back into effect. Then council does need to hold a public information, rather a public hearing, and hold the formal second reading. And that would kind of permanently bring these into effect as well. So the two motions are, one would be the kind of first reading there, notice of its intention. The second piece is kind of setting a date for the public hearing and second reading. The proposed date is March 11th. It's a council meeting. One thing that's not in there is a time. So we would ask that we would want to maybe amend that motion to include a time. Suggested time could be 8:30, which is, we've used that kind of time period in the past, which would be basically prior to a council meeting. There would be an opportunity for this public hearing. Council then could hold second reading as part of the council meeting itself. So that's just an overview of what's here. And of course, we've provided lots of back and forth, but we're happy to answer questions.
All right, could I get the motion on the floor first, and then we'll have questions related to the discussion? Councillor DeLong?
If I may, I have a question related to the topic, but not necessarily the motion. Should I ask it now?
As long as it's relative to the motion, you can ask it when we have the motion tabled on the floor.
But it's more so about staff's intention with
Okay.
the
Okay.
draft. So should I ask now or under
Ask
the motion?
now.
Okay. So yeah, thank you for presenting this today. Last week at Policy and Strategy, we were given staff recommendation to not go forward with first reading. Can you give a little bit more background on why staff thought that it would be better to prolong the process?
I don't think that we have a strong view either way. Our recommendation is that council adopt these regulations. So I think that's the most important part. Our view is that these should move forward regardless. I think that the timing is the piece. In our view, there's a benefit, I think, to seeing the regulations combined with the other things that will be part of our 2040 work. And there's also a factor of time and staff resources involved. So it's a little bit more work on our end to conduct a public information section, and all the pieces to move this forward now. But absolutely can understand council's desire to move quicker. We can accommodate that. But overall, our preference is that the recommendations and the regulations here move forward either way. And it's not a strong view about when, really.
Okay, thank you. That clarifies it for me.
Okay, thank you. Would someone put the motion on the floor, then, the first motion, please? Councillor Vino?
To Mayor McLean-Weil and members of council, I move that municipal council accept the recommendation of the Policy and Strategy Committee and conduct first reading of the amendments to the municipal planning strategy and land use bylaw to include new sections containing the regulations related to cluster development found in Appendix A and B, and I so move.
Do we have a seconder for the motion? Councillor Smith. The motion's on the floor. Are there questions or discussion related to it? Councillor Brooks.
This might just be a question for your presentation, the public engagement presentation. Do you guys have some more graphics of cluster development so people can see? Because I think it's really important that a lot of us know Little Hook, and I think a lot of people want to know that that's not going to happen again. So I think for the public engagement, that's just what I'd like to see, some more graphical representation of that.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll have lots of graphical stuff at that. Yeah.
Any, Councillor Bell?
Thank you, Your Honor. Question through you to read, please. In our proposed policy for cluster development, we are identifying 6 or more units to be included in this. Currently, under building bylaws in MODL, does our proposal in any way prevent 5 units on a single lot? It was identified through questions by Mr. Vino today that they felt that they could be excluded from provincial or federal funding for programs. Would we be eliminating developers' opportunities if we set the number at 6 instead of 5? If you could just give clarification so we could understand that.
Yes. That question came up, I believe, when we did a first draft of these. I think we talked about 5, but actually we did speak with Mr. McDonald as well, who presented earlier, raising that same concern, and we did sit down and have a fulsome discussion and understand some of those funding programs that do cut off or have only start at the 5-unit or 4-unit level. So we revised that actually in response to that concern. So basically by saying 6 and up, those 4 and 5-unit developments would not be considered as part of this and would qualify for CMHC programming and affordable housing funding. Now, having said that, there's an opportunity still to go through this process through a development agreement for maybe a larger development and then qualify for that affordable funding, but recognizing that this is not intended to capture really small developments. Those issues of water, environmental issues, other concerns, I think are largely they increase at the scale of the development. So in summary, yeah, absolutely, that 4 and 5-unit type of development that's trying to qualify for affordable funding, these would not capture as part of this.
Thank you for answering that. I thought it was important to re-emphasize that because we did have the discussion before, but it seems like it might be some misunderstanding out there. So I wanted to ensure that we were not excluding people from funding. Thank you.
Thanks for raising that, Councillor Bell. Councillor Smith.
I wanted to ask a question about the non-conforming allowances and the process that led to this draft that we're doing first reading of right now. Can you talk a little bit about why the December 31st, 2025 date was chosen, and about how long does it take for a developer to get registered through the, through the registrar of condominiums? Just trying to figure out, like, what kind of leeway are we giving people to prepare under these new regulations?
I don't actually know off the top of my head how long development of that nature requires. Our understanding is it's typically over a year. That's the intention for that leeway and that time. There are options around that. Council does not have to grant that time, so that's an option to consider the ones that are in progress. So there are a number of these developments that are already in progress, but they haven't fully registered. It's going to depend on the scale of the development, about how much site infrastructure is required. So that in turn, of course, is reflected probably in the longer timeline. Somebody who's doing internal road networks and doing a lot of hydro poles and on-site work that's considerable is going to require to do a lot of that work before being able to register that development. So that was trying to find a balance, I think, in capturing those that were in progress, allowing them to complete their work, while at the same time not opening the door to somebody new coming in with a project to try to take advantage of that. So I guess I can't give an exact timeline because I do think it depends, but our kind of what we've come to understand is that it's fairly lengthy in terms of the amount of legal and kind of site work that's involved.
Other questions? Okay, are you ready for the question? All those in favor of the motion as it's presented in 10.1.1 indicate by raising their hand, please. Those who are opposed, motion is passed unanimously. If we could go to the second motion, which reflects the... Sorry. Okay. If we could go to the second motion related to the timing of the date for the public hearing, and could we include in that motion the time, which was suggested that it be 8:30 on March the 11th? So could I have someone make that motion? Councillor DeLong.
To Mayor McLean-Weil and members of council, I move that municipal council accept the recommendations of the Policy and Strategy Committee and set a date and time, that time being 8:30, for a public hearing and second reading on March 11th, 2025 in council chambers on the amended municipal planning strategy and municipal-wide land use bylaw regulations. And further, excuse me, that staff schedule a public information meeting prior to the public hearing to inform residents about the implications of the new regulations. I so move.
Do we have a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Smith. Discussion on this motion. Councillor Brooks.
I'm only concerned about that 8:30 time. It feels like we need to be on top of our game, and the public will need to be on top of their game. It just feels a little late to me. If we could... Pardon me?
Wake up, Councillor Brooks. All right, any further discussion? 8:30 a.m. would be the time for the meeting on March 11th. All those in favor of the motion signify by raising their hand. Contrary minded, those opposed, motion is carried unanimously. We will move on to 10.1.2, which is the adoption of the draft strategic priorities. And Alex, are you taking us through this?
Yes, sure. As the mayor has pointed out, we have had a full presentation and detailed discussion on this at our Policy and Strategy Committee meeting, so I won't redo the whole performance. I'll just hit some of the highlights. After some strategic planning sessions, Council has identified 4 areas for strategic focus, being regional economic development, investment in infrastructure, quality of life, and communications and engagement. Following that, staff have identified a series of existing projects and new initiatives spoken of by Council, as well as a set of projects that have high alignment in all 4 of those areas. Those being our comprehensive land use planning project, MODL 2040, public transit, the development of a housing strategy, the construction and opening of our collaborative health center and municipal space, and continued investment, strategic investment in recreation infrastructure. In addition to the strategic focus areas, we've identified for Council a set of proposed lenses through which staff are recommending Council evaluate larger decisions that come before you. And so these would include whether or not they have alignment with your strategic focus, what are the financial implications and the budgetary considerations, what sustainability or climate change considerations are there, what inclusion considerations, and what strategic communication and public engagement considerations. So in terms of motions, we were looking for Council to adopt the priorities in draft so that we can take them to a public engagement event and see how the public feels about Council's proposed priorities. We're also looking for a motion to adopt those lenses for evaluation and then to go ahead with that public engagement event.
Thank you for that. And just for those that may be joining us online, the full discussion about this was held at our Priorities and Strategy meeting on January 21st. So if you want to check in with all of the detailed discussion we had there, you can go to our YouTube stream at that time, January 21st, to hear the details around it. But there will be lots of discussion about these strategic priorities as we go forward because they do frame the budget discussions that will be coming up over the next couple of months. So with that introduction, I would ask that we have the motion placed on the floor and then we can have discussion. Councillor Hubley, moved, please.
Thank you. To Mayor McLean-Weil and members of council, I move the municipal council accept the recommendation of the Policy and Strategy Committee and adopt in draft form the strategic priorities as presented, and I so move.
Do we have a seconder? Councillor Bell. Is there a discussion on the priorities as they've been set out in our previous discussion? All those in favor of accepting them indicate by raising their hand. Those opposed? Motion is carried unanimously. There is a second related motion to this. Would someone like to propose that, please? Councillor Moore.
To Mayor McLean-Weil and members of council, I move that municipal council accept the recommendation of the Policy Strategy Committee and direct staff to proceed with a public engagement event to gather feedback.
Just a second. It's one above that, if you don't mind.
Oh.
We'll get to that one.
Okay. To Mayor McLean-Weil and members of council, I move that municipal council accept the recommendation of the Policy Strategy Committee and adopt the following lenses for evaluating projects and proposals in 25-26. A, strategic alignment, B, financial budget, C, climate change and sustainability, D, equity, inclusion, and diversity and accessibility, and E, strategic communications. And I so move.
All right, discussion. Councillor Oikel. Oh, sorry. Okay. Thank you for seconding it.
I was just seconding it.
Is there discussion? Councillor Brooks.
I think I've said it in the previous discussion, but I'll just say that I won't be supporting this motion for these lenses. Anything that is not part of this council's purview where we don't have the capacity to do it effectively and come up with measurable results for the constituents, I can't support. I'm concerned that a couple of these lenses in here are going to have a negative impact effect on the economy, and therefore I cannot support this motion for these lenses.
Is there other discussion or comment? Councillor Smith.
Yeah, I'd just like to respond to that. As far as the lenses go, my understanding when I look at the lenses is that we're acting within our jurisdiction, and we have budgets, and these are lenses that I am fully on board with, and I don't really see the risk of adopting them, and so I'll be supporting the motion.
Other comments? All those, Councillor Brooks.
I would just say that though we are mandated by the province does not mean we have the budget or the capacity to do it. And a lot of what we do is virtue signaling, and it's not fair to the taxpayer. There are organizations and groups that have the capacity, have the manpower, woman power, and the budget to actually do this. I don't want us to continue to engage in things where we do shows to the public and it doesn't have meaningful outcomes.
Other comments? You ready for the question? All those in favor signify by raising their hand. Contrary mind, those opposed? Councillor Brooks is opposed. Motion is carried. The final motion as it relates to our draft strategic priorities, would someone put this on the floor for consideration? Councillor Oyko.
Certainly. To Mayor McLean Weil and members of council, I move that municipal council accept the recommendations of the Policy and Strategy Committee and direct staff to proceed with a public engagement event to gather feedback on the draft strategic priorities and launch the 2025-2026 municipal budget engagement work. And I so move.
Do we have a seconder for the motion? Councillor Hoobley. The floor is open for discussion. Any discussion on this? All those in favor signify by raising their hands. Those opposed, motion is carried unanimously. I think our presenters are here. Should we break? Yeah. Yeah. So our presenters are here from the Rural Communities Foundation. If we could just break for 5 minutes while we get them set up, and we'll come right back and have that presentation. We're just ready to start again, so if we could resume our places, and I'll invite Mr. McKay or Ms. Day. Mr. McKay is making the presentation? Okay. So today we have a presentation from the Rural Communities Foundation of Nova Scotia, and with us Hugh McKay and Penny Day, who's the Executive Director. And I'll turn it over to you to take us through the presentation.
Thank you very much, Mayor, and councillors and staff. Thank you very much for the invitation to come back and address you again today. As the Mayor indicated, I'm Hugh McKay, representing the Rural Communities Foundation of Nova Scotia, and I'm joined by our current, soon-to-be ex-Executive Director, Penny Day, who will be staying on an administrative role, but we are in the process of looking for a new executive director, so you can share that with your friends as well. So some of you will be familiar with the Rural Communities Foundation, both from our presentation last year and hopefully through an awareness in the community. So I'll briefly, for those though who are new to council and who may not be familiar, I'll just go through briefly who we are, what we do, and then I'm going to talk a bit more on the Dave Gunning Zero Hunger Fund, to which this council made a generous donation last year, and I'll speak to what's been done in there. And then I'll speak to what our ask for is this year, which isn't specifically monetary. So we are one of approximately 200 community foundations across Canada. There's the much larger and perhaps more well-known Community Foundation of Nova Scotia here. By our name, you would recognize that we are focused on rural communities throughout the province. And there is another one, the Mi'kma'ki Community Foundation as well. Our foundation has been around, maybe the mayor can correct me on this, but 20 to 25 years, I think, at this point. And we are a federally registered charity, so we are accountable not just to CRA, of course, but to our grantees, to our donors, and the community at large. And we don't operate in a silo. We are a member of the Community Foundations of Canada, the Nova Scotia Not-for-Profit Coalition, and a number of other allied organizations. These are some of our current projects. I'm not going to go into them all just now. There's full explanations on our website about those. I'll point out, though, that the Joan Fineman Climate Change Fund, which is one of our more well-known programs, named after Joan Fineman, was a noted American astrophysicist with strong family roots back to Nova Scotia. And after her passing, her family established a fund here. Joan was also a climate activist, and so they established a fund in her honor, and that's a 50-50 matching grant fund where a community organization that has a local climate change project can approach us, can apply for us, and we will match the funding to a certain degree. Having said all that, good news. The bad news is the applications are closed for this year, so you can apply for next year if you have organizations in your community. As I mentioned, some of the other projects you could view online here, I would mention the community impact conferences. Last year we held one up in Membertou and had representatives from different municipalities participate, and it was focused on climate change as well. So a number of municipalities spoke to what they're doing in that area. The Dave Gunning Zero Hunger Fund, though, this is the primary thing I'm coming to. Originally it was going to be the Bruce Guthro Zero Hunger Fund. With Bruce's unfortunate passing, though, before he did pass, he reached out to his friend Dave to see if he would pick up the torch and help us. And I've got to say that Dave hasn't just lent his name to this project. He's let his time, his energy, and financially supported this program. He's done a couple of concerts that were very specific to raising money for the fund, where the proceeds came directly to the fund. He mentions us or mentions this program at all his concerts, and we can tell when he's had a concert because we'll get a flurry of donations coming in the following day. So what is the fund about? It's supporting free stores, or what might sometimes be called free pantries, or perhaps backpack programs at schools across the province. About 80% of the schools in the province have a program such as this, and it differs from the more well-known, perhaps breakfast and lunch programs, which are funded by the federal and provincial governments primarily. This is a program where teachers will note which students are coming to school who aren't getting proper nutrition at home. And so many schools, as I said, 80% of the schools in the province have taken on similar programs to free storage, backpack programs, where a student can be taken to a discrete part of the school, be provided with some supplies in a nondescript backpack or grocery bag, whatever, to take home and share with their families. And the program receives no direct government funding. And so the weight, the onus for raising the funds and supporting these has been on the school staff, which is not sustainable and needs assistance. And so we were approached by school actually in New Germany was the one who brought it to our attention and said, is this something that's in your lane? Is this something that you folks could help on? And we looked at it and saw that, yes, this is a food insecurity for students is a problem right across the province. Food insecurity is for not just students, for families across the province. So we said, yeah, we'll take this on, and we made a commitment to do so for a number of years to do fundraising and providing grants to schools to support this program. So we set a goal last year of $100,000, and I'm pleased to say we reached that. And in December, we distributed $100,000 in grants to 36 schools around the province, including here in municipality of the District of Lunenburg. Those funds were raised through a combination of corporate, municipal, and public grants and donations. As I mentioned, Dave did a lot to publicize the program himself. We were very fortunate to receive a good-sized multi-year grant from a foundation in the corporate world. We were very pleased with the reception by the public in general. We got where we were able to market the program, if I may call it that. We were able to raise public funds as well. But a couple of municipalities also helped us out. Antigonish County, where I'm based in Antigonish, Annapolis County, and yourselves all contributed directly to the program. And what we're doing is ensuring that funds that were raised locally in such a manner are distributed to the local schools. This past year, as I mentioned, we were able to grant to 36 schools. We received over 80 applications, and I think that really speaks to the issue, really speaks to the depth of the problem, that so many schools are running these programs and looking for assistance. And I expect with the success of the program this year, word of mouth and presentations such as this, we're going to be flooded with a lot more applications this year. So we're recognizing that need. We're raising our goal to $200,000, and that's what we hope to be able to issue in grants in December. Is it a stretch goal? You bet, but we feel that this issue requires stretch goals. We've raised over 10% of the funding already, so we're very pleased with that. And I will mention that in addition to a robust corporate awareness and marketing program, that we will be making applications to community grants right across the province from municipalities. But primarily what I'm here for today is just to create awareness of the program, because you folks are on the front line of speaking with your constituents, with the residents of your community. You're in contact with the businesses in your communities, and when it's pertinent, when it's appropriate, if you have an opportunity to mention this program to people who may have interest in donating and supporting the program in some manner, we would greatly appreciate that. As I mentioned, Dave did a couple of concerts very specific to raising funds for the Zero Hunger Fund. And so one thing we want to do, well, we don't want to eat his lunch, but we have spoken with his agent, and they are prepared to do a few more concerts. And so we're looking at doing these in a couple of municipalities around the province that may be able to support us, either through a venue that they could operate and provide to support the program, or awareness, ticket sales, whatever it might be. But I'll just mention that we are looking for that. So I'll leave it at that as an update on the program, and be delighted to take any questions that you may have. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. McKay. Dave Gunning has been here, hosted by a local resident who organizes concerts, Gary Lonas.
Okay.
And Gary does all the organization on his own. He has some volunteers who work with him, but he has a very successful run here of doing concerts to raise money for various community causes, and that stretches everything from the Health Foundation here to breast cancer to other charities. And Dave Gunning has been here to sing at a number of those, perform at a number of those. So I just say that by way that there is already a mailing list of people who like to hear Dave Gunning here, and Gary Lonas's concerts pretty well sell out. So they're hosted here. Usually it's about 200 people he'll have at a concert. So I just put that in to say that there is an infrastructure here for those kind of concerts. So questions?
That's good news. Could I just check, the last name again was?
Lonas.
Lonas, okay.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for that.
Okay, some questions. Councillor Oikel first, and then Councillor Hubley.
Thank you very much. Yes, I remember you coming last March when you came, and I understand that the municipality, we gave you $12,000, and all community money is to use within the municipality. So I'm just wondering how many schools within the municipality applied, and if there is any of that money is left yet, or has
Okay,
it been
thank you for
all
the-
used with the schools?
Thank you for the question, Counselor. Yes, $12,000, and there was a list of 12 specific schools that the money would be distributed to. 7 of those schools applied to us, and all 7 of those got it. The other 5, for whatever reason, didn't actually make an application, but we've held those funds specifically, and they will be awarded the money as soon as they make application to us this year.
Follow up?
Go ahead.
Thank you. Have you contacted those schools to let them know regarding your program and to apply?
They would have been informed by the Regional Center for Education.
Okay.
We made it clear to the regional centers which schools were to receive funding.
Right, okay.
We'll make sure that those 5 schools apply in this coming round, so that the money will go to them.
Okay, great.
Even if I have to write the application myself, they're going to apply this year.
Well, there may be other reasons. They may not have a facility within their building to house the food, or people willing to volunteer to run it. But thank you very much for letting us know.
Councillor Hubley.
Thank you, Councillor Oikel asked my question.
Other questions? Okay. Thank you very much. We'll make sure that we send you that contact information for Gary.
Thank you, much
Okay.
appreciated. Okay, well, thank you very much. I appreciate your attention and your consideration. Bye now.
Thank you. We'll resume our council agenda by going to 10.1.3 and communication and public engagement. Alex?
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Mayor. So just to, again, provide a quick overview of the longer discussion, which was held last week at our Policy and Strategy Committee meeting. Our Manager of Communications, Sarah Kaharski, was here and provided an explanation of work that the municipality does in 3 arenas. So that would be our communications work, which is more one-way, providing information out to our community on things that the municipality is doing. Our engagement work, which is more of a two-way, where we are looking for input from residents on decisions and issues that are facing the municipality, and then also on options for community engagement in the council process itself. So there's a full report in the PSC materials. Some of that material, again, is here in our council package. The conclusions from the discussion where we have a number of suggestions from council on things to improve both the volume and the feel of information that we're pushing out. And then also the ways that we will engage with and the frequency which we will engage with public engagement. So some key items here are doing more things like piggybacking, some of the innovative approaches, changes to our municipal matters publication and our digital content, as well as looking at the development of an app for the municipality, sort of a one-stop shop for information that would also then allow for notification of residents through the app. So it's voluntary, but it would provide a much greater amount of information directly to the residents. And then finally, there's discussion on council processes, which leads to the motion that you have before you today, which involves moving one of your regular council meetings, so this being the second Tuesday of the month, from a 9 a.m. start to an evening start.
So there was a lot of engagement at council, at policy and strategy, about new things we could do, improving the way we connect with our residents and how we can get information out in a timely way, but also to get feedback from the public. So over the next number of months, and certainly through this year, but through the next number of months, there will be, residents will see a significant change in how we approach our budget process, which will tie discussion about our strategic priorities together with budget and the implementation of those strategic priorities within our budget process. So those will be public meetings. There will be opportunity for public input, and we're looking forward to being able to take that next step in terms of public engagement. Right now, though, I would like to have a motion on the timing of our evening meeting that we're proposing. So if someone would make that motion, 10.1.3 in our agenda. Councillor Bell.
To Mayor McLean-Weil and members of council, I move that municipal council accept the recommendation of the Policy and Strategy Committee and pass a resolution to set a meeting time of 6 p.m. for the council meeting regularly held on the second week of the month, beginning in April 8th, 2025. I so move.
Do we have a seconder, please? Seconded by Councillor Hubley. Is there discussion on the motion? Councillor Vino.
Thank you so much. I spoke last week of my excitement for going forward with an evening meeting. It's something that I heard from my residents, and looking forward to following up with them to say that this will go ahead if passed today. And I did have a funny comment that was mentioned on the weekend, and their response was, now I can watch your council meeting as I make and have supper. And I thought, well, that will be an interesting thing to do. So even if folks aren't necessarily attending in person, they might make use of watching that live stream at that time.
Other comments, questions? All those in favor signify by raising their hand. Those opposed, motion is carried unanimously. We'll move on to agenda number 10.1.4, which is the repeal and replace policy 003, council members' remuneration, benefits, and expenses. Ms. Payne, no, Ms. Wenzel.
Thank you, Madam Worship. I appreciate your our opportunity to discuss these policies. As we discussed them last week, the council members' remuneration, benefits, and expenses policy does have to be readopted every January following an election. So we made some changes. The municipal clerk, April Wynant-Lonis, and myself looked at this policy, made some changes for accessibility. And I think this policy outlines how council members are paid, how your expenses, what expenses you can claim, and how your process for claiming them.
Okay. Yep, go ahead.
And just for clarification, at the policy and strategy meeting, there was discussion and direction for staff to look at the section 10.1 of the policy and include a item on constituency-related communication, and we've added that on, and that would be on page 56 of your agenda. And so I just want to make sure that that meets what the committee was thinking when we were discussing that.
Thank you for that. Would someone please put the motion on the floor, and then we can discuss anything related to it? So that's 10.1.4, please. Councillor Smith.
To Mayor McLean Weil and members of council, I move that municipal council accept the recommendation of the Policy and Strategy Committee to repeal and replace Policy 003, council members' remuneration, benefits, and expenses as presented.
Is there a seconder for the motion? Seconded by Councillor Burns. Discussion on the motion. Councillor Burns.
Thank you. I just wanted to make the point for anyone listening today, although we discussed this particular point last week, I think it's important for folks to know that as we do this, we're doing this not because we're changing what we're paying ourselves or what we're claiming or anything else, but we are required under the MGA in order to reapprove this following every election. So this is an administrative task that we have to do, and we are not changing our pay or benefits or anything that would benefit us as councillors by doing this. We're following the administrative task. So to anyone who may be streaming this, like Councillor Vino's folks over supper time watching it back, I just wanted that point to be clear.
Thank you for that. Any other comments? Councillor Smith.
Oh, sorry, I forgot to turn off my mic. I just also wanted to emphasize that the change with the communications part that Ms. Wenzel mentioned does not actually expand our budget. It's just another thing that we are allowed to do within our budget, and we can manage that accordingly.
Thank you for those clarifications. Are all those in favor of accepting the resolution as presented, as the motion is presented, indicate by raising their hand? Those opposed, motion is carried unanimously. If we could go on to 10.1.5, which is the approval of amendments and readoption of policy 077, gifts and hospitality.
So thank you, Your Worship. This policy, 77, again, is an administrative function, that a policy that council must review and readopt or adopt this policy following an election. So further to councillors' questions on that, this is very similar. So we did look, we look at this, it follows, this hospitality has to do with, what gifts can be, given and the amounts and how that the procedure for doing so, and hospitality is required by the Act that we have to have a hospitality policy in itself. One of the things that we did pick up on in our definition versus the legislative definition in the Financial Reporting and Accounting Manual was that hospitality in the legislation is for conducting business activities, and our policy says municipal business. That certainly could be a differentiating thing when you think about the terms of municipal business versus business activities. So for clarification, we believe that it should be changed to business activities versus municipal business. That would be in section 2B of your policy under definitions.
Will someone make the motion, please? Councillor Hubley.
To Mayor McLean Weil and members of council, I move that municipal council accept the recommendation of the Policy and Strategy Committee to amend and re-adopt Policy 077, Gifts and Hospitality, as presented, and I so move.
Do we have a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Burns. Is there a discussion on the motion? All those in favor signify by raising their hand. Those opposed, motion is carried unanimously. We'll move on to approval of Policy 102, Audit Committee.
Further to the administrative changes that we have to look at, or administrative policies, this is the third one that we are required to have council look at and approve under the Act. And this Audit Committee policy actually is new. In prior council term, it was part of the terms of reference for the Audit Committee. We made a decision as staff that we thought it would be more transparent, because terms of reference aren't readily available to the public, however policies are, that we actually incorporate this into a new policy, and it sets out the responsibility of the Audit Committee and their duties therein per the regulations.
Thank you. Would someone make this motion, please? Motion 10.1.6. Councillor Moore.
To Mayor McLean Wall and members of council, I move that municipal council accept the recommendation of the Policy Strategy Committee I thought I was on the wrong one again. That municipal council accept the recommendation of the Policy Strategy Committee to adopt new Policy 102 Audit Committee as presented, and I so move.
Do we have a seconder for the motion? Seconded by Councillor Burns. Is there discussion on this? All those in favor signify by raising their hand. Those opposed, motion is carried unanimously. We'll move on then to agenda number 10.1.7, which is amendments to Policy 049, Property Tax Rebate. Councillor Bell.
To bring it on the floor. To Mayor McLean Weil and members of council, I move that municipal council accept the recommendation of the Policy and Strategy Committee and include the changes to the property tax rebate policy in the 2025-2026 draft operating budget for council consideration, which reads, households with an income under $30,700, a maximum rebate of up to $680. Households with an income under $30,751 to $45,000, a maximum rebate up to $475. Households with an income under $45,001 to $60,000, a maximum rebate of up to $270. I so move.
I think, Councillor Bell, you said 30,700 instead of 30,750 as the income on the first breakdown of tiered income levels. So we just correct that in the audio recording. Is there a seconder for the motion? Seconded by Councillor Moore. Ms. Wenzel, do you want to speak to this? Any background on this before we open it up for discussion?
Certainly, Your Worship, I can give a background. So council is aware, and perhaps for the listening public, this property tax rebate program is one of the ways that the municipal council does support low-income homeowners with granting a property tax rebate based on total household income. And this rebate is a targeted tax relief strategy where council has put up to a 2 cent in a general tax rate reduction into the rebate program. We have successfully, rebated homeowners, over 1,000 homeowners in this fiscal year. The rebate program does stay open for the entire fiscal year. Last year, there were a lot of changes made to the rebate program with increasing thresholds and increased amounts, and we have room in the existing budget that won't be spent in this fiscal, and therefore the recommendation was to increase the thresholds from 50,800 and 51,750, I have to look, to 60,000. So the threshold's been increased, and as well as the rebates were increased by CPI, or an average of CPI to reflect cost of living. And we included a provision for interest on, that might accrue between the interim and the final tax bill of that fiscal year, so that residents who may find it onerous to pay the interim tax bill could not pay it, and the rebate would cover that interest in that interim, as interest is a council policy, and we're mandated under the Act to charge it. We will be bringing a policy change to your next Finance Committee to allow for staff and give them the authority to do that interest adjustment.
So just to be clear, this is a proposal that will come to our budget discussions, and we wanted to get this underway before we started trying to figure out all the other aspects of budget. This sets a level for looking at how we might deal with the issues around tax rates and how we might target particular groups within our community that will benefit the most from getting this kind of support. So with that, we have a motion on the floor. Is there discussion? Councillor DeLong.
Thank you. Very supportive of this motion. That said, as it was being read out, I'm wondering if we have the phrasing wrong. The first bullet point should read with income under, but the following bullet points, should they not say with income of, for instance, 30,751?
Between.
Okay, of or between.
Councillor Reinhardt.
Thanks. I raised this last week, but I just wanted to clarify my position on it. I think this is a really excellent policy in helping people who need help the most. But I think moving forward, I'd really like to see a consideration of household size and the income thresholds adjusted when we consider it for the future. I know this is for this budget, but.
Certainly through the chair to Councillor Reinhardt, if council wishes us to look at this again before your budget, you certainly have the right to do so. If all of council believes that household size is something we should be looking at, then certainly we could take that back, because this is just going for, budget consideration, and we do take our direction from council on that.
What is the wish here? Councillor Bell.
I don't want to interrupt discussion on her thought.
Maybe if you could just hold off, and we'll just, if there's thoughts around this in having this part of the consideration, we'd have to make an amendment here, but that's okay, we can do that. Councillor Brooks.
What would be the process, Ms. Wenzel, to find this out? Do we have the data at our fingertips to find this out?
Through to Councillor Brooks, there may be some data in the census, the 2021 census, that we could review. Part of the application process is signing an affidavit, on behalf of the homeowner. So when they sign that affidavit, we could include number of people in the household and let them tell us. So there's certainly we could do it many different ways, and of course, with any of these kinds of programs, you kind of have to figure it out, but I would have to look at the census to see if that data is available, so we could get some understanding of how many households might be affected by that change.
Councillor Vino.
I'm just cautious with making changes now, because I don't want to delay the process for those that are dependent on these funds that would normally receive it.
But this is for the coming year's budget, 25-26, and I'm not sure, to your point, how much time might be involved in actually rejigging this to look at that. So,
Not saying I wouldn't be opposed to a future, but right now, and knowing what's to come, I don't want to delay folks receiving these funds.
We'll go to Councillor DeLong and Councillor Oikel in just a minute, but do you want to make a comment further to this?
I think further, through the chair to Councillor Vino, we wouldn't really delay people getting the funds because the deadline's August 1st, and the applications probably, once budget is set, we are hoping for early April to set the budget, so we should have applications ready by the first week of May. And people really don't get their notice of assessment from CRA until May, June, depending on when they file their income taxes. So I don't think there would be a delay in actually receiving any benefit from the program.
Councillor DeLong and then Oikel.
I think that Councillor Reinhardt's suggestion has merit. I am not entirely sure how it would play out, and I would want to hear a staff recommendation on, that this is a new threshold for a family of this many, or this is how we would administer it to a household of this many, before I can really comment, but in principle, I think it's a good idea.
Councillor Oikel.
I also am in agreement with Councillor Reinhardt that this is something that we could look at. My problem, though, is that do we go up to 70,000 if you have 5 children living at home? Where would we put, what would be the threshold? Where would we go? And right now, if it's one person living in the house, it's 60,000, or if there's 2 people living in the house, or if 7 people living in the house, that's 60,000. I still think we should continue on with what we have right now, because I think it's a larger, bigger discussion regarding how many people are in the home and how high up of a number we would go for the rebate or for the income thresholds. Also, I believe, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but it's, even though they sign an affidavit, there's nobody witnessing it, right? It's just them and their own honesty, correct?
Yes, that is correct. I think maybe 3 years ago, or maybe perhaps during COVID, I believe when we were all shut down, that we removed the requirement for them to swear an oath to a commissioner of oaths, which we have several here in the municipal building, so it wouldn't cost anything. However, we did remove it, thinking that signing an affidavit is signing an affidavit, whether it's witnessed or not. At the time, council thought that was a good idea.
Just to add on to that, anytime you have an application-based program, you're creating a barrier to accessing that program. So making that application as lightweight as possible reduces that barrier. You have to acknowledge you have a population that you're trying to target, and because the capped assessment program, when it was first introduced, was application-based, and so the benefit was going to wealthier, higher educated folks who were able to file the application form and tell the province that they were eligible for the capped assessment program, so their property assessment should be capped, and they were getting massive tax benefit. The program was then expanded to be automatic, and then the benefit was more evenly applied across to at least meet the policy objectives of the program, whatever your current concerns are about what that does to the distribution of taxes based on income. So in this case, you're targeting the program. It has to be application based as currently constructed, but you want to keep those application requirements as low as possible, particularly given the population you're trying to target, because you don't want to knock them out of it simply because there's an extra step required in order to get that program application in.
Councillor Smith and then Burns.
I just want to say I think it's an excellent point that Councillor Reinhardt has raised, and if I understood it as she raised it, it's something to think about going forward. I appreciate that there's been improvements to this policy, which I think is like you say, is one of the strongest in the province. So improvements have been made this year, and I think, Councillor Reinhardt's point was that going forward, how can we improve it even more? And if it's in our minds, that, this is an improvement that we can make for next year, I would support that. for sure.
Councillor Burns?
Yes, thank you. I actually wanted to echo some of the sentiments that Councillor Smith said and thank Councillor Reinhardt for bringing this forward. I think we share both some certain lived experience perspectives on household size and affordability that's not always there at other stages of life, especially with kids and whatnot. And I would say that as I've been going through my district, one theme is that people do speak about affordability in general with me. Their concerns about affordability do change depending on what stage of life they may be in, what household size they're in. Is money going more towards I need to save for retirement now, or is it going more towards I need to make the bills with my kids stage of life? So I'd like to thank you for bringing this forward. I think when it comes to this, this is a step that as we're amending today, we definitely should move forward on, but I think it's something that we should keep in the back of our minds is if the opportunity arises to look at that. And I would encourage that just in general, this won't be the first or last discussion as we move through budget season on affordability, what that means and how we can improve that for residents. So let's keep Councillor Reinhardt's suggestion in mind, as well as many others I'm sure we'll be bringing forward with different perspectives from our residents on that issue.
Okay, I'm not hearing, I'm hearing that we should think about it for our next next step in the evolution of this program. And I think and I appreciate that Councillor Reinhardt raised it. There's obvious support for it around the table as the next iteration of the program. But for now, I think I'm hearing that we'll stay with what's been tabled today. So back to Councillor Bell, if you want to speak on the motion.
Thank you. This property tax rebate policy is among the best in the province. Although last year I did hear comments that it was not as encompassing, or that maybe the ranges of capturing individuals may not have been as specific as it could be. And so we did adjust it this year to try to take a good policy and make it even better. And I think that is a reflection of all of us hearing comments of how you can take something that's good, make it better. And the discussion here today with this next step for consideration is also a way we could make it better. I am not interested, though, of putting any additional funding in this particular financial year. I think we've raised it and reflected CPI, but we can certainly look at how we can tweak it under the existing figures that we have, I think. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Councillor Bell. Any other comments anyone would like to make? I'll just, in closing, maybe comment on the movement on the upper level of income to $60,000. If you think about, and I've asked for these numbers here, and we don't have, it's hard to get Stats Canada numbers that are really up to date, because the last census, those numbers are 2021. But if you think generally that what I've looked at is that individual average income in this district is somewhere between $35,000 and $38,000 a year. That's average, not the median, but average. And if you think about that, if it's a two-household family, we're still in that, we're up to the $70,000, $75,000 range. That we still maybe have room to move here to really start to capture what might be what we need to look at. But I think we need more research on that. We need some better numbers. And I think also capturing what Councillor Reinhardt has said in looking at household numbers, then you start to get a better picture. So I think these are all elements of this program that can be refined over time, but I think we've taken another step towards making it more available to a larger number of our constituents, and we'll see what the uptake is on it. We know that this year there's still room in the budget, and that's why we're bringing it forward. And to Councillor Bell's position, going forward for the coming year, we're going to leave that amount of money at the budget, on the budget line for this program. But I think there are other elements of it that we should really be tweaking as we look and get a better assessment of individual income, family income, and the implications of that as we move forward. So just as a closing comment, is there anyone else that wishes to speak to this? Could I have a raise your hand if you're in support of the motion as been presented with the income levels beginning at $30,750 and going through a breakdown which includes households with incomes ranging between $45,100 to $60,000 as a maximum rebate of up to $270. All those in favor signify by raising their hands. Those opposed, motion is carried unanimously. We will move now to discussion around pickleball, which has already come up today in the conversation. Our Director of Recreation, Ms. Payne, will lead us through this discussion.
Just put my mic on, that would help. So as council recalled last week at Policy and Strategy, I made a presentation concerning the request from the South Shore Pickleball Club for council to consider entering into a management agreement, enabling them to develop 6 courts at a piece of property at the Mark on 33 Leary Fraser Road. So there was a motion that was put forth. At that point in time, when I made my presentation, we didn't have a cost estimate, so I do have some updated information that I'll share today. The South Shore Pickleball Group has been working with a particular contractor that has built pickleball courts across Nova Scotia and beyond, I think even in the United States. The estimated cost without HST, they were provided with the figure of $487,622. So I did add the HST to that, so it would bring that figure to $765. So roughly, give or take $600,000 for 6 pickleball courts. One of the comments that the contractor did indicate that if they were to build this year, they felt that they would have sufficient materials on hand. One of their concerns, which I think is probably concerns of many people, is we don't know what the tariff implications could be for any of us, for any goods and services moving forward. And so if this, interpreting this email that was sent to me, that if it was year 2 or year 3 that the pickleball courts were to be constructed, this quote may not be as relevant at that time frame. Even with the markets, it may not be, but tariffs might have a significant impact. So I just want to provide that information. I won't go through the entire presentation that I made last week unless there's particular questions, but I know that council wanted that information, and I want to bring it forth today.
Thank you. And I just want to make sure people understand this, what we're proposing today, and we'll get the motion on the floor, is that Ms. Payne work with the pickleball group to come forward with a management agreement which would provide the details of what this proposal would actually look like. So I think there were a lot of questions in our discussion last week about this and what it might look like from a funding point of view, about how access to the court might be, given it's a local private organization that's doing this, a community-based organization, how the access to make it a public venue for a broader use in the community, what that might look like, and also the details around how it might be reclaimed if for some reason the pickleball interest dies and we're left with a court then that could be, the location could be returned to a bare space, a green field again. So with that little bit of background, I'll ask for the motion to be put on the floor, and then we can have a good discussion. I just want to to add that information. Councillor Hubley.
Thank you. To Mayor McLean-Weil and members of council, I move that municipal council accept the recommendation of the Policy and Strategy Committee and direct staff to draft a 5-year management agreement with the South Shore Pickleball Club for establishing 6 outdoor pickleball courts on PID 604-13234, part of the Municipal Recreation Activity Complex, and further that the agreement be brought back to council for final approval. And I so move.
And seconded by Councillor Bell. Thank you. The floor is open. Councillor Moore.
Thank you. I just want to make sure that the minutes reflect, and anybody listening, that right now, this is just going to be a management agreement with the group. I know I keep saying I've been told that. But we are not, committing $600,000 today to a pickleball court. I just want to make sure that the public knows that. Those details of who's going to fund what and how much will be coming later. Thank you.
Other people who wish to speak to this? Councillor Brooks.
I guess this just comes back to my concern about how we do management agreements with groups. And I understand their position that they feel like they cannot get money without a management agreement. I frankly doubt that. I'm glad, thank you, Trudy, for bringing us the new number of what they're looking at. I still feel the same way, that now we know it's around 6, so come back with 3. And let's have a good conversation. But I still feel because I don't believe there's zero cost for us to enter into a management agreement while they fundraise. I think there's staff that's going to be dedicated to this. Am I correct with that, or am I off base with that?
I guess how I would respond to that is part of my role as Director of Recreation, Parks and Tourism is to work with nonprofit community groups, whether that be a pickleball club, whether that be a Legion or Lions group or a food bank, part of that community development role. So yes, you're correct that there would be work that on behalf of staff to draft the management agreement, make sure that all the T's and the I's are dotted and bring that back. But that would be no different than any other management agreement that we've entered into, like the Riverport Park, like the United Communities, like the Wildlife Association that manages Sucker Lake. I'm trying to think of all the other ones. So I see this very much as part of the regular work plan in our department. One of our roles is to support volunteers and community groups. We often say that there's a lot of things that we can't do by ourselves, and we very much support that in the community, for the community, by the community. And I see this as an example of that. And being the municipality being part of the community, I see it as us bringing part of that partnership and helping community groups to be sustainable and trying to make them as successful as possible. And I very much see that as part of the role of our department.
Councillor Bell.
Thank you. There'll be some that will say, not everyone plays pickleball, but a large number of people do. We are one of the only or last areas of the province not to have a proper facility to play pickleball. We were also one of the last places in the province to get a field house. We were also one of the last places to get an indoor swimming pool. So I think this is really important to really explore it in greater detail and come back with more direct costs and commitment from those who do play pickleball. I'm truly going to support this because I think it's really, really important. And I just go back and reflect when 2 individuals came before council here years ago with a vision of the South Shore Field House, and there were doubters. But ever since then, thousands of local youths have used the field house and have had the experience of having indoor soccer 12 months a year, which would not have been here had we not taken the chance on the vision of these 2 individuals that came here. We did make a financial commitment, but so did they as a group and as an association, and look where they are now. And that facility is used for other things, for indoor walking track. It was used by the town, the region, on Remembrance Day. There's local businesses there, and it was a success story that was able to happen because a few people had a vision and that's why I'm going to back this.
Councillor Smith?
I just want to thank you for your work on this so far, and I really look forward to the draft agreement. I think it's going to be so important for us to actually be able to talk to residents about this in detail, in like concrete facts about this project. And certainly, you know, I would echo what Councillor Moore has said. You know, we just need to find at what level of financial contribution are we comfortable, are residents comfortable, and go from there. But you know, I also agree with Councillor Bell's comments on the value of this project to the area, and I will be supporting this motion in particular about the draft agreement. Thank you.
Councillor Wickle?
I just want to re-mention again my concern regarding this club having a monopoly on pickleball, because there are other, you know, smaller little groups, because I just don't want everybody to feel like they have to belong to this pickle group in order to use the courts that we will be helping to pay for.
So again, I think I did take notes, and I'll go back and listen if I didn't capture the notes, but I clearly understand that's a concern of council. And again, that would be part of the management discussion around how it can be membership-based but still provide public access.
Councillor Reinhardt?
Yes, thank you for your work on this. And yeah, with other councillors, I look forward to seeing what the management agreement looks like. I was just wondering if, where you have done a lot of management agreements, do you have anything that might be similar to something like this, that you've done in the past, like at this kind of funding level, that you might be able to talk about how that worked?
What I would say is I'm definitely going to go back to those management agreements. I'm not going to reinvent the wheel. They all look slightly different, but a lot of the legal and insurance clauses would remain the same. So, you know, from a fundamental level, I think it's what do we want to see from the pickleball club? The discussion around the amount to me is a different discussion. It's how do we want this management agreement to work and make sure that we have the clauses in place that reflect that. That's how I would view going in. Now, if we want to put in there the amount, like, you know, the percentages that is in some of the management agreements, we certainly can do that. But I'm not sure if I completely understand your question, but we're not reinventing the wheel. We are going to go back, and I'll be working with our CAO, who also happens to have a solicitor background, as we're drafting that agreement. And I just reiterate that we'll be bringing the draft, and if council's not happy with it, you can tell me to go back and say, these are clauses that we feel are missing. You need to renegotiate, and then bring it back.
Councillor Brooks?
Thank you, Trudy, for that. I do want us, hopefully, with all of our management agreements going forward, be really clear to the people who approach us. We're interested in partnership. We are interested in people in the community lifting some of this, but I really want for our constituents, for them to know that when folks come to the table, folks have come with some of the money. So Riverport Park was in here the other day, and Greg Amos spoke, and he said, we're taking the year off because we're going to fundraise. And I said, Greg, I think that's an excellent idea, because I will be able to get behind it a lot better if you come with $250,000. And I think it's just as simple as that. I want to support all community projects that folks want. I just want us to really be very, very clear about cost.
Councillor Moore?
Thank you, Councillor Brooks. I totally agree with you. So, through you to Trudy, so the management agreement, when it comes back, will not have a funding calculation in it for the amount what we are comfortable with, what they are comfortable with fundraising and do other levels of government. So that's not going to be in the management agreement?
It doesn't have to be, it certainly can be.
Okay.
And so some management agreements, we've made the commitment to help with operating cost. With some, we have said there's no guaranteed funding, you have to apply for grants through the regular course. So again, I take direction from council because the management agreements are all different when it comes to the funding formula.
May I? Once we do have the management agreement, if it has no financial aspect to it, are we in it no matter what?
How I would respond to that is, again, the management agreement is one thing and the funding is another. So if there's nothing in the management agreement about funding, what you've done, if you've approved a management agreement, is you've entered into a management agreement to say that they can develop pickleball courts with a parking lot and a bit of a driveway that would be access for the mountain bike club. And if you don't have any funding formula or any commitment, it's really now their project, and they have to do the job of fundraising, whether that's going to the province and applying for funding for the federal government. I anticipate I think I would be sitting here if I think they will come and ask council for money, but ultimately it will be your decision how much that is, what percentage that is, and I guess to Councillor Brooks' point, how much they have demonstrated of how much they have brought to the table and how much they're looking for, and to Councillor Bell's point as well. So I think the management agreement outlines that, this is what you can and cannot do on the property. This is what of our expectations when it does open, if from a public's perspective. We set the rules around how that particular management agreement can work, and they have to determine whether they want to sign off on that management agreement or not, and where, we might have to negotiate in between.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure that signing the management agreement does not tie our hands to make any substantial amount of money put into the pickleball court.
I'm going to suggest, and I'll get to you, Councillor Brooks, that I would like to see us make a decision on this sooner than later as a council. This has been around for quite a long time, and we need to just make a decision. So the management agreement is an important part of this because it sets out the details. But the fundraising can or could not be part of that management agreement, because we could put in a clause to say, our support is contingent on such and such and such and such. So I will just suggest that in order to expedite the decision-making at council, that this not come back to us till there's a clear ask from the group as to how they see the funding formula working. And I would suggest it be 1/3, 1/3, 1/3. 1/3 municipal, 1/3 provincial, and 1/3 from the community, as a place to start the conversation and have that built into our next consideration. I just feel we owe it to our community to make a decision on this. And I think we can do that if we have good information, and that reflects, I think, the conversation we're having here, which is about the commitment of the community to put money in, what we can then look at as to our commitment, and then what other sources of funds, whether it be provincial, federal, or a combination of that. But I think that needs to be part of what we see next. So I just say that. Councillor Brooks?
I would agree with what you're saying, Your Honor, and I think that personally, I would like us to craft a management agreement that sits right over here. And then we say to them, this agreement will kick off when you come with half of the funding, and then things kick into overgear. That would be my order of operations, and we can certainly do it the other way, where they don't have money and we put in the management agreement that you need to hit X number of dollars in order to continue the management agreement. I'm just trying to, want us to do it in the most efficient steps, as opposed to backtracking if it doesn't work out.
I think just to add to that, and then I'll take any other questions, I just want to see us move it ahead, and not rushed, because the community needs time to really think through what's reasonable here. But I think it's important, we need to make this decision, and but we need full information and we need a good plan, and I think that's what we're asking for in doing this. So are there other comments or questions people would like to add to this? I think we had a good discussion of policy and strategy. I think there's been more evolution of the discussion today. Are you clear to what we're getting at in terms of a direction?
Yes, I think I'm very clear, and I think that the fact that 1/3, 1/3, and 1/3, and you could put a ceiling to that 1/3, would be beneficial to the South Shore Pickleball Club as well, depending on their own time frame, because the big government grants are happening very soon, and any indication, even if it's not officially signed off, they can indicate to the province and the federal government that there is a willingness on behalf of the municipality, although the official agreement and the official dollars has not been approved technically by motion. So I think it would give them that start point.
We'll leave it with you then to take the sentiments from the table back to the pickleball group. So is there further discussion? Councillor Moore.
Should the motion not have that stipulation in it? No?
I think it's okay.
Okay.
I think we've captured, Ms. Payne has heard the sentiments at the table.
Okay.
The management agreement can present it in a number of ways, but I think the direction is pretty clear here.
Okay, perfect, thank you.
She's nodding her head, so I'm taking that as a yes. Further comment? All those in favor of the motion has been tabled, raise their hands. Contrary, those opposed? Councillor Brooks is opposed. All right, let's move on to the nominating committee. Councillor Oikel, you going to make the motion?
Yes, I can.
Thank you.
To Her Honor Mayor McLean Weil and members of council, I move that municipal council accept the recommendation of the nominating committee and appoint Alex McDonald as a member at large on the Audit Standing Committee for a 3-year term from April the 1st, 2025 to April the 1st, 2028, and I so move.
Sarah, seconder for the motion. Seconded by Councillor Vino. Any discussion? Councillor Oikel, did you want to speak to this?
I just want to say that I'm really grateful that Alex has stepped forward. We've been trying to find somebody for the audit committee, a member at large from the community, for quite a number of years. And so I'm glad that we are finally able to have someone that has committed to the 3 years and is willing to work with us.
Any other discussion on the motion? All those in favor signify by raising their hand. Those opposed, motion is carried unanimously. We will move on to staff reports, and Mr. Waters, you're on District of Lunenburg Housing Overview.
Mr. Reed's going to join me on this one. Thank you, Your Worship and Council. Reed's with me here today to talk about this particular topic. It was on the policy and strategy agenda, more for discussion, so there's no motion on this particular item, but our agenda was a little bit full last week, so we carried it over to today. I hope that's okay with Council. We wanted to do an overview from staff's perspective on the housing file and things that we can possibly do, so we can bring some projects back to council moving forward. So these are really for discussion points going forward. I'm starting off the presentation with this particular slide. It's one that we use in the sector. Currently, what staff is focused on, and if this is not the direction of council, please let us know. But we are working on the affordable rental, affordable home ownership, market rental, and market home ownership. We are not focused on the homeless, emergency shelter, transition housing or social housing at this particular time, based on direction that we've received in the past. So I've got a short agenda. We're going to do a quick housing overview, where we get our direction from our strategic action plan, the authority of what a municipal government can do under the MGA, some options on some things that we can do to help promote affordable housing projects, some current available land that we have, and then some next or current steps that are underway. And I will pass it over to Reid.
Thank you, Dave. These are just some high-level kind of indicators of the current housing state in our municipality. So, as of course you're probably not surprised, we have a huge proportion of our homes are detached single-unit dwellings. So, you know, what we're seeing in Osprey Village and the kinds of development that is occurring here is different from that. But when you look at detached or movable dwellings, which includes things like mobile homes, it's high 90s. So it's very, very dominant in terms of detached homes. The number of affordable limit units within the municipality that are considered affordable, you know, as like subsidized homes are very limited. When you look at costs of you know, ownership or rental units, those costs, unsurprisingly, of course, are significantly up over the past 5 years in particular. I think partly as a result of that, what we're seeing is an increase in the number of renters. And so that, combined with that next point there with the number of rental units that are on the market in our municipality, has put pressure on that particular area. You can imagine how there's people who are getting priced out of ownership, are getting pushed into the rental market. There are not a lot of rental units in the municipality, in the region, especially, of course, the town has quite a few more, but this is a general overall trends that are consistent among the whole region. What that has indicated generally is that we have a high housing need. We also have other factors that are more unique in our area compared to some parts of the province, which are a high number of seasonal dwellings and short-term rentals, which add additional complexity. There's not a direct correlation between affordability and the number of, you know, short-term rentals, but there are hundreds of them, and that does add additional pressures. We also have an aging demographic in our municipality as well. So you can understand how there's a link between people needing to downsize or moving from one type of unit to another, and the need to have those other types of units available for them. So when we talked to people about the MODL 2040 project a few years ago, a couple of things they raised about housing were there's a need for affordable housing and there's a need for seniors housing as well. One of those important key pieces that we always want to try to address is when we're talking about affordable housing, what are we talking about when we mean, what does affordable mean? There is not a one-size-fits-all for this term. CMHC uses, I think this is probably a common term, which is if something's considered affordable if it's less than 30% of a household's before tax income. So when you look at some programs like CMHC has, they use that as determining as something being affordable. But when you look at the different funding programs, they're all over the place. So there are grants and loans. Some of the grant programs of the province have a 20% below the average market rent requirement, and then that has to last for 15 years. Some CMHC grant programs look at affordability, and they're probably looking, you know, thinking about 30%, but if you can go lower than that, it will rank higher. There's loan programs that are accessible to not just the affordable sector, but the private sector. Those use other metrics like 30% of, you know, median total income, certain percentage of the units within a project. So it does really depend on the funding program about how those other levels of government determine what affordable means.
Thanks, Reid. Oh, sorry, we have a question.
If we hold the questions to the end, if you don't mind, I think then we get a comprehensive presentation, and just make note of your questions and we'll have a good discussion at the end. Go ahead.
Sure. Thank you. Just for reference, in our Economic Development Strategic Action Plan, 2023-2028, we put in a strategic direction number 5, which is affordable housing, and that was to work with existing developers on committed projects. We have a few committed projects, Stone Mount and FH Development. So to finish those projects as we move forward, and then to investigate alternative affordable housing options for the district. And we did want to look at areas in Osprey Village, but also in areas throughout the district as well. We did do a brief look at New Germany about a year ago, and we certainly would like to revisit that in other areas as well. So the Municipal Government Act, it does give us some levers to do some things as it relates to affordable housing. It's a little bit more broad spectrum than it was a number of years ago. I'll touch on the first two, which is more related to the economic development side. We can address the following. The first one is Section 51-1. A municipality may sell or lease property at a price less than market value for the purpose that council considers to be beneficial for the municipality. Certainly affordable housing would be one of those. And Section 57, the MGA permits units to provide direct financial assistance to businesses for the purpose of increasing available of affordable housing in the municipality. And I've got another slide that'll kind of touch on those two items.
For the next three, the MGA allows a municipal planning strategy to indicate through their land use bylaw a regulation that requires a certain percentage of or number of units within a certain development. Typically, those are bigger developments because you can understand how a small development would be hard to provide a certain number of units. So there is that ability. There's also an ability, rather than accepting units, to accept cash in lieu of those units. And so if probably the most known program of this is what HRM has. They have a requirement where they what they call it density bonusing. You can get the extra height as long as you provide a certain number of affordable units. Typically, they just take the money rather than the units, and then HRM doles that money out to in the form of grant programs to affordable housing developers. The statement of interest is another part of the MGA where it's requiring the municipalities through their land use bylaws account for housing, making sure that they're allowing lots of different types of housing, that they're not overly restricting that would then prevent types of housing from being located there.
Thanks, Reed. So some things that we could look at, and we have looked at a few of these in the past couple of years, but I want to go over them so council can consider some of the items. The first one is the district could look at making municipal land available to developers for less than market value for the purpose of affordable housing. We have done that in the past. We'd like to know if that's still a direction that council would like to proceed on. The District of Lunenburg could purchase land and then make that land available to developers for affordable housing projects. We don't believe we've done that in the past, but it's something we have investigated and could investigate. The district could provide a per-door grant to developers for the purpose of building affordable housing out. That's something we think has really good merit, can help stimulate more affordable housing units moving forward. The district can provide a tax benefit. I can let Tom speak to this if needed, on how we can then directly reduce the monthly rental rates on affordable units. The district can look at waiving municipal fees on affordable housing projects, and the district could develop a housing strategy moving forward. And I think the option of a housing strategy has come up a few different angles, and we support that as something that we probably should be looking at moving forward. So there are a few available lots left in the district. There are not very many, unfortunately. We've sold pretty much everything that we've had at our disposal over the last 18 years, but there are a couple lots left. There's PIN number 607-30413, which is, for reference, across the street on the corner of Champlain and Highway 10. which is on the other side of the street from our municipal building. It is 3.3 acres and certainly could be used for an affordable housing project if something came forward. There is 12 acres out on Harold Wynot, which is PID 604-48824, which is across from the Osprey Ridge Golf Course. It's our last piece of property we have in what used to be, and I think we still call it the industrial park, but it's that piece of property out there. We have looked at that in the past for projects, and we have had people interested in that. We still have 606-31009, which is 36 acres behind the French School and the community hub. There is a partner interested in helping us to develop that. I will caution that one is a little bit different because we don't have sewer capacity to do it at this point in time. It's in our long-term plan to do that, and something that the municipality definitely should consider moving forward. And then there are some various smaller lots that we have in our surplus plan that is available for projects, but they're typically 1 to 2 acre type properties, and typically in subdivisions is where they typically come from. So before I open up the questions, I do have some next and current steps that we have on our list. So one is to continue to make municipal land available to developers, of course, less than market value. If council wishes to prepare a per-door grant for affordable housing, it'd be good to try to set some sort of measure of what that is, how much we would do in a per-door grant. We certainly have some ideas on that, but there is no set number as of yet. Consider waiving fees on affordable housing projects. Investigate future land purchases. We have looked at it, but I will be honest, we haven't looked at it extensively, but it's something we certainly could. Consider partnering with other municipal units to enhance central services. I believe this is something that is being looked at, and I encourage it strongly on how we can extend services. We have some abutting properties of multiple municipal units, so doing that would be of benefit long-term to the municipality. Work with developers on affordable housing projects. We continue to do that, and I would encourage us to continue that. Enhance a yes-first mindset. We want to make sure when it comes to affordable housing projects that we look at how we can make them happen. I realize there are requirements that we have. There's building items that we have, and there's the MG that we have, but the mindset of how we can make it happen first is probably something we'd like to move forward on. Again, look at a housing strategy within the district. And then our 2040 plan to enhance flexibility and enable planning tools targeted at affordable housing. And with that, I'll open for questions because this is really meant for discussion.
Councillor Oikle.
Thank you. So I just have a few questions. The 30% that has been assigned to be of a person's income. So if a person's making $60,000 a year, that's $1,500 for rent or mortgage a month. And then so does that 30% include heat, taxes, and insurance, or is it just the rent and the mortgage?
Sure, yeah, I believe that it's usually looking at all of those pieces, so it's housing-related costs, so it would capture like the heat and insurance and all those pieces as well. So as you can imagine, a lot of people, they might pay $1,100, but you add utilities, then you're getting up to the 15, 16 and up.
I have another question, but I can wait because I know you like one at a time.
Yeah, we'll come back to you, Councillor Oikle. Councillor Bell.
Mr. Walters, you identified 36 acres, which I believe is right there. Also, can you confirm that currently wastewater lateral is in this intersection for Nathan Cirillo and the school road?
I could certainly let engineering speak to that, but there is a lateral on that corner.
So
for
my
that.
point is, if somebody came and wanted to develop on 36 acres of land, that would mean could potentially be a lot of housing units available. I would be very interested in talking to them and how to make that happen. I don't know what the rest of the council thinks, but.
Yeah, it would be significant housing, particularly because we do density in Osprey Village. We do have some plans, but we've delayed moving those ahead because it would require a sewer treatment plant upgrade. We're doing one now to facilitate the projects that we have and some exterior expansions, but it's not sufficient to cover what would, you could put roughly 400 to 500 units back there fairly comfortable. That would require another sewer treatment plant upgrade.
While I'm aware of that, and we are currently doing upgrades, I think we're already, I'll ask Steve, looking at a phase 3 to that
Yes.
project. So all I want to do is emphasize we are not limiting ourselves. What does limit us is funds, but I am sure that the province and the federal government would be glad to talk to us if we were interested in hosting what is one of their number one plans.
Yeah, I can let Tom speak to it, but engineering does have a plan for the next phase.
Thank you, Mayor. So one of the things that will be coming to council next month is a discussion on how we can work with our neighboring partners to manage growth in a way that supports all residents in joining municipal units. One of the key factors for Osprey Village is water capacity. So in addition to sewer capacity, we'd have to ensure that there's water capacity for the development. But it is a subject that has been identified in the strategic priority sessions, how we can manage growth, and so that will be coming to council next month for discussion and a recommendation.
We'll come back to you, Councillor Bell. Councillor Brooks.
Thank you for putting this together, you guys. To me, this is a really exciting one for us because there's a journalist in the States, Naomi Klein, and she says a crisis is a terrible thing to waste. And we've got a really neat opportunity here. I'm really enjoying these conversations about new things like cluster developments that could really have some different fits for the constituents. I understand we've had a little bit of a centralized approach lately that may not be the fit for all of our constituents. So I'm glad we're thinking about different proposals. I've drafted a proposal which some folks have seen here. I'd like it to go back to you guys, and I would like council to maybe take a look at that. It's definitely in line with the cluster development portion of it. We'll have some limited ability to get into some other levers that could be thrown to get folks into housing, but I think as we stretch as a municipality to say what's in our purview, this is a really important one for our economy and for the members of our community. So, yeah, let's try to work to get it right. Thank you, guys.
Councillor Smith, and then we'll come back to Councillor Oikel.
I'm just wondering if we have the data that we need in terms of housing need in the district, because, we're doing that study on the rental market, but I'm just wondering what our data looks like for all our residents, because I'm sure that it's pretty diverse across our municipality.
Yeah, and I would agree with you to some degree. I am on the Social Housing Action Coalition, so we get data through them. Reed and Planning is doing their data analysis, which will help. But I think the housing strategy would actually be another step forward to better understand the scope. We do have information. We know there's a need. Like, that's pretty self-explanatory. But the depths of the need and where it scans out is one of the reasons why we're in support of the housing strategy, because that would help bring that forward with the work that Reed is doing, and Reed could certainly speak.
Yeah, just to add to what Dave was saying, the Social Housing Action Coalition has some really great information on their website. These tables they put together partly to help inform the election process last year, but one of the things I think the mayor really, which was a really important point that was just made earlier today, was that the survey, or the StatsCan household survey, was 2021, and so that's not due for another year. But that data is getting really old right now, and our provincial housing needs assessments that were done pointed out one element of that collection in 2021 was it captured incomes that were boosted because of the CERB payments that people were getting at that time. And so I think that the picture that we can see from these, tables that go 06, 11, 16, and then to 2021, paints a rosier picture probably than that actually exists today, partly because it's older data now. Things have changed a lot. And also those numbers were probably inflated a bit because of that period of time that it was measured. So I think all of that to say, we don't have enough data. We're working on that now. And I think things are likely, the need is much greater. This says, the picture that's painted by this says there's a need. But I think what we know is it's actually much greater than what is here.
Just on that point, and Councillor Brooks brings this up a number of times, that the market understands what the market needs. And one of our partners' original plan was to build one apartment, fill the apartment, and then build another apartment. They do their own due diligence as private sector folks. They've already started building two before building one is even half finished. They know the need is there. They know they can fill it. So there is a need. I would like what Councillor Smith is describing, to have a better scope of the entire district, but there definitely is no question there's a need.
Okay, Councillor Oikel, and then we can go back to Councillor Bell.
Thank you. No, Reed already answered my question. It was regarding the survey.
Okay. Councillor Bell?
Thank you. As we're aware, there is a lift station at the intersection of Highway 10 and McCullough Road. A modification could pump product towards town of Bridgewater instead of MODL wastewater treatment plants. We should always look at all avenues on how we can partner with a neighboring municipality who may have capacity not being used now. We shouldn't rule that out of selling product or paying a cost fee to have it processed, which may or may not be cheaper than building our own site or increasing the capacity of our own existing system. If we haven't had the chance to explore these, we probably should.
So to your point, and then it really speaks to what Tom spoke of earlier, the need for a planning strategy and a growth strategy, how we manage growth in the periphery of our more densely parted portion of our district, and then look at, how we go out. So to your point, particularly Councillor Bell, this was raised at a meeting we did have in the last week with the town of Bridgewater, the mayor, and I'll be reporting on that in a few minutes. But this kind of thinking about how we look at managing growth, and that means the development, the planning regulations, how we handle wastewater, how we handle water sourcing, all of that becomes part of this strategy around managing growth. So this is going to come back to council very shortly for a discussion. So I'm glad you've raised it, but it is on the radar.
Okay, I was not aware of your discussions.
It's coming up today, so, yeah. Councillor Brooks, Councillor Vino, and we may try to wrap this up for now. Yeah.
The gentleman who came in and spoke to us today, who's been here twice, pitching his idea for the cluster developments and enlisting local builders, I think is a really interesting one. I can tell you from my time in Los Angeles that I never saw an affordable housing project start that finished with affordable housing. And there is a profit motive for the developers, and they're in it to make money. And in the same way that we choose a different path in Canada with our healthcare system to not be for profit, America does it differently. I'm definitely for the free market. This is an area where I feel this is crucial to our constituents. And so identifying and finding those developers and nonprofit entities who want to do this, I believe, if we can find qualified individuals, is the best bang for the constituents' buck. We don't want to be left on the hook. Well, it's overrun, and I'm sorry, now we have no affordable housing left. We just have got to do a better job for people.
Councillor Vino, then Councillor Smith.
Thank you. I'm just curious, do you ever get approached by developers who want to move outside of the standard building and modular housing or tiny home housing and are looking for land to make single detached units as opposed to the traditional apartment-style
That's
complexes?
fairly easy, yes.
Do we? Okay.
100%, we do. We actually have a project that's similar to that, that's in waiting, that could be done, and in multiple locations. So we do that as well, for sure.
Councillor Smith.
Yeah, thank you so much for your comments on the housing strategy. I think that's really key, and I think it's really key that we understand the needs of the district, because I don't think that the free market will take care of all of it, and that we have a duty to look at housing for people who are, falling through the cracks because we've left it to the free market for so long. Housing is a human right, and we need to be looking at people who are not going to be served by the market. And if we can't meet those needs as a municipality, we need to be strongly advocating to our partners provincially and federally to look at those needs. And I'm talking about the need for supported housing. I'm talking about the need for second stage housing for women leaving shelters. Like, we are in a major crisis of gender-based violence, and housing is a key part of that issue. And I just would caution us to leaving it to the free market because it's failed us.
One thing, sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
If you don't mind, Your Worship. One thing that to speak to Councillor Smith and Councillor Brooks' comments, the one thing that has been noticed over the last couple of years is the breadth of the not-for-profit housing developers. They're much stronger now, and there are more of them and doing very, very good work that requires them to keep the affordable housing rates as they are. I think that's a really good avenue, and I've been more encouraged by the work that they have been doing in the last couple of years than just strictly the private sector individuals. More because they have a mindset of affordability and a requirement to stick to that than just private sector.
Okay, I think we've had a really good discussion, and thank you for the presentation. I would say, from listening to the depth and breadth of conversation here, I think that the housing strategy needs to go high up on the list of priorities when we come back, when all of this is coming back to us for our budget considerations, because the housing strategy, much like when we talked about parks, without a plan, we're piecemeal. And we really need a plan that's going to take us, because any of these housing developments and projects, they're not one-year projects. This is like a multi-year. We're looking out 5, 10, 15, 20, 25 years to really be able to accommodate the needs of our changing demographics and the growth in our population. So if we can begin as a council to start thinking about that in terms of a strategy going forward, I think we'll be much better off. And then all the elements we're capturing here about how we create the right environment for the mix of housing that we need, I think becomes part of that. Plus, the strategy will make sure we've got the right numbers to start with and the right projections as we go forward. I know that becomes a moving target because we know that we're going to continue to grow in this community, but we aren't likely going to grow at the same rate we did from 21 to 23. And maybe that's a good thing. 1%, 1.5%, that might be what we really are best suited to do over the next number of years. But all of that will get reflected in a strategy. So I hope from the conversation today, you take some direction as to our appetite for seeing a more comprehensive look at housing and the housing needs of our community. So thank you for that. I think it opened up a good conversation here. So you get a flavor for what we're interested in looking at.
If it's okay, can I just ask one question that me and Reed have? We agree the housing strategy is definitely priority number one, but we do have projects that we're working on. Is there any items in the list that's on the screen now that cause issue for council? Because we do have things in waiting.
I think you need to bring your budget back and see.
Okay.
I think that would be the best thing. Yeah.
Okay.
Let's move on to engineering and waste receptacle procurement.
Hey, thank you. So I am here today to request approval from council to purchase 23 new waste receptacles for our parks and open spaces. So the new bins, the 23 new bins, will replace some aged bins that we currently have in circulation in a number of our parks. In addition to that, it would provide new bins to locations that don't currently have any, but where they're required to under the parks and open space standards and guidelines. So last fiscal year, the Recreation Department carried out procurement to acquire park furnishings, so benches, picnic tables, waste receptacles, and bike racks. The successful quotation provider for the waste bins came from Clean River Recycling Solutions. It is a high-density polyurethane, a recycled plastic product that's branded and color-coded to our wayfinding and a part of our branding that we're working towards in our municipal spaces. So under that procurement, 9 bins were purchased and are distributed in various MODL spaces now. So this initial purchase of the 9 bins represents a third of the volume. We would need to have these bins in all of our locations to service the users and then allow the staff to perform that routine maintenance item of our waste collection in the spaces with those consistent products. So the supplier's original pricing is still valid under that procurement. And it is staff recommendation that purchasing the additional bins needed now so that they can be received and distributed and installed before our next full open season late spring this year. So under the 2024-25 capital budget, Council had set aside $260,000 under a rec asset account for asset purchases such as furnishings, waste receptacles, or to implement outcomes of the accessibility audit. So it is staff's recommendation that we use a portion of this capital fund for the purchase of these waste bins.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Butts. Just for information purposes, because I think it was raised by one of our residents at an earlier meeting, Mr. Himmelman, about local procurement, and if you just want to speak to that, and
Yes.
there was concern around that.
Yes, of course. So under the procurement policy, we post out procurements, and any suppliers can bid on that procurement. We did not receive local submissions on the procurement. I know from past opportunities for going out to quote, we have in the past received submissions from local suppliers, but in this case we did not. So they weren't able to be evaluated against the criteria or the pricing model at the time.
So could I have someone put the motion on the floor, and then we can have discussion around it and any questions you might have for Ms. Butts on this? Someone make the motion, please. Councillor Oikel?
To Mayor McLean Weil, members of council, I move that municipal council authorize staff to purchase 23 new waste receptacles for the municipal parks and open spaces from Clear River Recycling Solutions in the amount of $56,250.70 plus HST, and I so move.
I think it's Clean River.
Oh, sorry,
Yep.
Clean River Recycling
Do we have,
Solutions.
do we have a seconder for that motion? Seconded by Counselor Burns. Now, any discussion or questions on this? Counselor Moore?
Thank you. Through you to Rhea. Did you say that in the past that we had local businesses submit quotes for garbage containers?
Yes, that is correct.
Okay. When we go out for procurement and we don't see anything that is local come back, are we obligated to contact the past ones that, I know it's their job to make sure that they look at what's going out in procurement, but it's also our job to make sure that we try to keep something as local as possible. Is there a way that maybe we could sometime go back out and ask the ones that are local, if they've seen the procurement, if they want to put in a quote?
I know there's nothing that's in the policy regarding communicating with local suppliers. Certainly, we always make sure that everything is well advertised to provide the opportunity, and continually take calls from various companies and suppliers, and always connect them with the right contacts or the right locations to look for information that might be coming up, or bring them awareness around projects or things that might be coming out locally for opportunities to bid. Unfortunately, in this case, I wasn't the staff person who carried out the initial procurement. Was one of the recreation staff that has now moved to another position temporarily, so I'm coming in on their behalf with the information. So I can't speak to the details of any conversations that may have happened at the time.
I also can't offer any information about the specific procurement. In terms of your procurement policy, you do have a buy local preference, which meets the provincial requirements, because there are limitations to the extent to which you can do that, but it offers a price advantage for contracts that are under a certain threshold. So that's the formal way that council can do it. We have identified that procurement's an area where we would like to be able to devote some more resources to, and based on discussions at the MJSB, I'm very hopeful that the coming budget year we will have more resources as a shared service. So we will be able to put more effort into that area. Some specific areas that we hope to see some improvement is opportunity to develop more relationships with local bidders, so they're better prepared to make bids on local preference, so they stay within the Procurement Act, but find ways to do that. And also our engineering department has found on a number of occasions going out on a whole project has resulted in bids that are well beyond the municipality's budget. But when we take on some of the general contracting responsibilities and then can work with suppliers on RFQs, that's been a more feasible approach. We get better value. It's a higher staff intensity. But if we have a procurement resource on board, we might be able to identify when that might be a more appropriate use to use that strategy, so that we can get better bang for buck and also therefore include more local suppliers.
Yeah, Councillor Brooks, just before you speak, on this point, because I know it's been raised here repeatedly over certainly the time that I've been listening to council, about how we can involve more local procurement. And I think there is coaching needed, perhaps, and some education about how we can, to your point, have closer relationships on some of these things. But it may be some workshops or coaching that could help some of the potential suppliers figure out how they can more effectively contract for some of the work. And I think that's something that we will see and be encouraging with the development of the procurement position that's being proposed at Municipal Joint Services Board. So I think people are hearing the concerns of council to try to see what we can do to help foster this development of our own local suppliers in a way. So we have a role to play there as well. So, Councillor Brooks.
I would really like to just support what Councillor Moore and Alex said. My gut always wants to see a couple of bids. And when I don't see two bids, I get concerned. And so I don't know if we need to find a process where we get two bids come hell or high water, so that we can say to the taxpayer, we got two bids. I also know, and I think councillors who've been on this council for some time know, developers, contractors, individuals see us coming a mile away, which is how we get a quote for $2.1 million for pickleball courts from Dexter. So, you know, we've got to really, really increase this communication for the developers to find ways to have better partnerships with people who are not just going to take us. Because when they take us, they're taking their neighbors and they're taking themselves as well. So this procurement piece, as it you know, matters right across all departments in the district, is really a huge one. You know, $2,400 a unit for a plastic unit. I feel like I'd like to get on the phone this afternoon and call a few other people, see if I can find a lower price, see if we can talk to some other manufacturers. I'm not totally comfortable with that price yet with one bid.
I will just confirm that there was 4 prices received, and this was the lowest price per unit that we did receive under the process. So we did accept the lowest price. I will, just it's an aside, but when we ran the LaHave program and we issued our tenders, we sent out emails in advance of every tender to all of the registered local installers. They're registered with Wastewater Nova Scotia, and so there's a very robust contact list that everyone is listed on their website. So we did, as part of that process, to make sure every available opportunity was there for the local community of installers to bid on those projects. So we would send them an email every time to say, you know, we will be posting a tender and advertising as another mechanism to make sure we were getting information out. So it's just an aside as a conversation of procurement.
Okay, is there other questions? Oh, Councillor Hubley. Then we're going to have the vote. Yep.
I'd like to, I like what we do to stand the test of time. I don't think this is just a plastic waste bin. Polyurethane is a lifetime material, is it not?
Yeah, we had criteria as well to make sure we had the long lifespan, maintenance, that we're not going to have wear. So for UV, also, you know, the sustainability element with the recycled materials that were going into. So there was criteria as well for the bins. We also had criteria for, you know, size, access, to make sure universally people could get into the bins. So there's different configurations, you know, with handles that might be tricky for some people to use, that we wanted to make sure that we were providing the best product, and long lifespan was one of those criteria in the evaluation. Mm-hmm.
Okay, is Councillor Vino?
I don't like the quote, but I understand the quote. It's much higher, I think, than any of us would ever pay in our own property for a bin as such. But a little brief history. At Saw Pit Wharf, we used to have 3 barrels. And those barrels, people would fill up with their household garbage because they were big and they were round and you can bring down multiple bags. At one point in time, all 3 bins were full and there was 18 bags of garbage surrounding the bins. These bins actually deter that from happening. People can't bring down a bag of garbage and stuff it in the little box. And to my knowledge, it's definitely saved our rec staff from going out almost every other day to gather garbage that's left. For some reason, these deter people from leaving household garbage, which means we're not paying the extra, we're not paying the staff aren't driving out, they're not having to go to the waste site to drop it off. So just a little history, because I was approached saying, what's wrong with the round bins? That was a problem at Saw Pit Wharf in the past, of the misuse of those round bins.
And the
Thank you.
critters like to get into them, too.
Thank you, Councillor Vino. I'm going to call for the vote, unless there's someone that's anxious to make another comment. All those in favor of the motion that's on the floor regarding 23 waste receptacles for municipal parks in the amount of $56,250.70 plus HST, all those in favor, raise their hands. Those opposed? Councillor Brooks, the motion is passed. We will move on to reports. LCLC. Councillor Hubley. No. Okay. Okay. Councillor Vino, sorry.
Yeah, thank you. Just give me a second here. Okay, so this is the first update to this council, so it might be a little bit more lengthy, but I think there's some important things to mention. The appointed members for this 2-year term are myself, Councillor Hubley, which is serving as chair, Councillor DeLong as the alternative, and Mayor Elspeth McLean-Weil. And for those that might not realize it, Marta from our Department of Recreation is the new interim general manager over there. And I requested at our last meeting that a tour of the facility might be nice for new councillors that have not had a chance to view that, or current councillors who want to refresh. Our last meeting was held on Thursday, January 23rd, and a following is a summary from that meeting. Fancy Pants owners who run the cafe within the LCLC came to that meeting and mentioned that they've noticed increase in business as well as events that are taking off. And it would be great if there was more seating and also utilizing outdoor space, picnic tables, and seating in general. Under general operations and maintenance, staff have been making significant progress in addressing the deferred revenue issues within the registration system by working on identifying gaps in the current workflows and actively developing and implementing improved procedures to streamline operations and enhance accuracy moving forward. In addition to those efforts, there's been a strong emphasis on maintenance and cleanliness. Cleaning schedules have been reviewed, updated, and expanded to ensure a higher standard throughout the facility. In the coming weeks, user engagement surveys will be rolled out to gather feedback from members and visitors. These surveys will help staff to understand user experiences, identify areas for improvement, and shape future programs and services. Staff are also in the process of reviewing and updating booking procedures, hoping to streamline the process, improve response time, and ensure a more user-friendly experience. Membership numbers showed a slight decline in the fall, but have rebounded in January. Compared to this time last year, it continues to head in the right direction. They recently hosted their first Sticks and Pucks program on the ice, which was a success. For those not familiar with that, a lot of the time when you go to public skates, you just have your skates. We have a lot of dedicated hockey players out there that would love the opportunity to hit the ice with their stick and a puck, and this gives them the opportunity to do that. The aquatic schedule is being updated to include more fitness swim times, more times for private rentals, and scheduled maintenance. They're also looking to add ice maintenance time into the arena schedule. There's been numerous events hosted over the last 3 months, and I encourage you to follow their website or Facebook to keep up with those. Some upcoming events: a mall market hosting Winterfest Craft Fair, the Gary Wenzel March Break Tournament, South Shore Expo, National Para Hockey Tournament, and as mentioned this morning, the Nova Scotia 55+ Senior Games. If you're looking for more information on dates, feel free to reach out, or you can look on their website. The marketing and events manager, who deals with advertising and sponsorship, has conducted a comprehensive, thorough analysis of the facility's marketing plan, revealing countless opportunities for businesses to advertise at the LCLC. Sponsorship and advertising packages are being updated to accommodate all budget levels, ensuring maximum profit and increased engagement with local businesses. The naming rights to the arena and aquatic center are also up for renewal. The general manager report also brought forward some capital projects. I'm just going to list them and not go within details, and folks can review the minutes if they want more information or follow up after I finish. Some capital projects in the works are EV car chargers, roof investigation, Galleria tile replacement, aquatic tile repairs, office and gallery furniture, accessibility enhancements, storage solutions, aquatics infrastructure, and loss of phase protection. And that ends my report.
Thank you for that comprehensive report. Any questions for Councillor Vino? Okay. Do you want to go on to your Deputy Mayor's report?
Sure, that'll be much shorter. I've attended all meetings as assigned, agenda briefings, and this past Saturday, the LaHave River Salmon Association dinner and auction with Councillor Oikel, and I was also happy to see several staff members there. This also was my first time attending a live auction, and that was intense. Never seen one in person. If you haven't been one, it's something to see.
Don't put your hand up. Scratch your head.
I quickly learned with April sitting beside me not to point, scratch, fix my hair, put a coat on, just don't move.
The last item before we break for lunch is my report. There were several important meetings that happened since our last council meeting. The Regional Emergency Measures Organization met to carry out strategic planning, and two important outcomes of the meeting were an agreement to review the governance voting structure of REMO, which currently requires modal plus one other to approve decisions. This is particularly problematic as viewed by other partners, and there was agreement to review this and come forward with some revisions. The second issue raised was the perceived inadequacies of the current staffing component to address emergency issues throughout the 5 municipal units. Essentially, we do not have enough staff throughout the region working on emergency preparedness. It was agreed that each unit would identify the needs in their local area and then determine how these could best be addressed through the planning and budgeting process of REMO. A revised budget process was agreed upon, which will come back to Council for approval and inclusion in our annual budget. I met with Peter Silver and several others who represent the Arties Cove and Pond Development Commission. That includes the Surfers Alliance and the local fire department. They were advocating for road upgrades and road protection from the beach surge, parking for beach users, signage, and protection of Arties Cove as a fishing spot. Their priority was repair of the road and culvert. The road shoulders have dramatically eroded since I think they presented to this council in November, and are designated by a couple of fluorescent markers, which they thought just one of the residents had put in place. I agreed to bring these issues to the attention of Becky Drouin, the MLA for the area, to see what approach can be taken with Public Works to have these repaired. And I should say I met with her yesterday. Tom McEwen and I met with Tammy Crowder and Mayor Mitchell to begin discussions on issues of mutual interest. These included initial discussion around water and wastewater management, regional planning to support growth, regional economic development, and public transit. Further details will be presented on the recommendations from the meeting at our council meeting on February 11th, which will include a joint committee of Modal and the town to begin working on some of these issues. It was agreed that the regional approach to planning might take several years to complete. However, the public transit needs should be acted upon immediately, given a study has been completed by Modal and the town are interested in collaborating on a joint initiative. I did meet with Becky Drouin and discuss the following issues. Arties Pond, as I've already mentioned. New Germany School was discussed. The role of the community and the municipality, what our role could be in both those groups in playing a part in the development of of a concept and idea about what should be included in the school. It was determined that action can come from the municipality to indicate our interest in the planning by communicating directly with the head of the South Shore Centre for Education, Ms. Angela Gladwin, and the Minister of Education. So we'll act on that. But it is a sign for the community to start to think about what they might want to, how they might want to be organized around action towards the development of a school plan. The recommendation to develop a management plan with the pickleball group, I did discuss with our MLA, and suggested that, as I did earlier in the meeting, that a three-way split might be a good approach with the community, municipality, and the province partnering on that. The need for, and the final item I raised with her was the need for opening the palliative care beds at Fisherman's Memorial Hospital and the need for a hospice for the Lunenburg Queens communities. In conclusion, I was encouraged by our parks and recreation discussion last week. There was excellent participation by all councillors and good thinking around the value of public input, planning, and the implementation strategies of the plans developed in concert with the community. We have lots more work to do on this after staff come forward with criteria to help us in establishing our priorities around developing our park system, and we'll look forward to that in the weeks to come. So that would be my report for now. Councillor Moore.
Sorry, could you go back to with your meeting about the school with Becky Doohan? Do they want us to, as a community, to form some kind of group to work with them? Are they going to ask that be done, or do we form it and go to them?
I was being very proactive.
Right.
In suggesting that the community would be happy to step up
Right.
and be involved in this, and she was very open to that.
Okay.
And she said the sooner that we can get organized, the better, because sometimes you need to really keep pushing forward on the interest at the community level on having input on it. And her recommendation was to at least table our interest, and I say ours, as a municipality, I
Right.
think we would have an interest.
Right.
But speaking on behalf of the community as well, to table that with the head of the South Shore Centre for Education and with the Minister of Education to say that there is community interest here in what that school might look like. Other questions? Okay. I think we'll break for lunch. What time is it? 12:12. We'll come back at 1:10.
Perfect. So Allison?